Hey guys, hope you are well. So, welcome to the Anime Fictions 2.0. This is the story about what if Naruto fall in love with Nami. Part 1. If you love this Whatif, do subscribe for more awesome Whatif. Share with your friends and enjoy them. Check out the other videos I have created. Comment down your opinion. Share with your friends. So, without wasting any time, let's jump into the first part. The Fishman District started out as a gigantic institution to take care of orphaned children. But barely a year after its creation, it descended into chaos and anarchy. The people in charge were unable to keep their charges under control, and so became a lawless region, homes to rebels and outcasts of Fishman Island. Gang violence was an everyday occurrence, and normally most fishmen within the district didn't live long lives. That was until one of the mightiest fishmen to ever exist took over the entire district, and ruled over it until he left to be an adventurer. That man was none other than Fisher Tiger, the first captain of the Sun Pirates, the only person of any species to stand up to the Mariehua, and possibly one of the four most famous fishmen to ever come out of the district. The second being Jinbe, a royal knight of King Neptune's army, the second captain of the Sun Pirates, and first fishman to join the 7 warlords of the sea. The third being the infamous Arlong, a crew member of the Sun Pirates, and later the captain of the Arlong Pirates. And finally the fourth being Macro, a member of the Sun Pirates, the later captain of the Macro Pirates, and a notorious slave trader. But on this day a fifth person would be joining them, a fisherman by the name of Uzumaki Naruto. His story started like any other. He was born to Namikaze Minato, a bull shark fisherman, and Uzumaki Kushina, a dolphin mermaid. He grew up with love and affection until the two were captured while they were out catching fish for their small, but respectable restaurant, and eventually sold in Sabaody Archipelago, leaving him at the mercy of the Fishman District. This is his story. Hearing the telltale scream of a fishman getting the living crap beaten out of him was the alarm clock Naruto woke up to. Flinging the torn and dirty blanket, the blonde yawned before getting to his feet. Bringing his hand to his back, he bent it back and popped his spine back into alignment after sleeping on the hard floor within the hut he was provided with. After scratching his side, Naruto proceeded to put on a blue shirt and a slightly tattered pair of white shorts. I wonder if Madame Shirley has some work for me? He wondered to himself. After his parents were abducted, the blonde fishman was forced to live within the Fishman District when he was 6 years old, and it was only 6 months ago did he find a job that wasn't illegal after nearly 2 years. Giving a fond smile, he remembered going past the Mermaid Cove for one errand he was hired for within the Fishman District. All was what he considered normal while he was returning after the successful drop-off when he found himself abducted by the playful mermaids, and because he was described as adorably cute, they helped him as best as they could once they found out about his life. Whenever he came around, they always had some sort of work for him. Usually they were small stuff, but he was eternally grateful for their kindness. After walking out of the severely damaged hut, Naruto headed straight towards the coral mansion on the sea floor of Fishman Island. Stepping over several unconscious bodies, he kept his eyes peeled for any type of threat hidden within the dark alleyways. It wouldn't be the first time a child, or even an adult, jumped him. After Fisher Tiger's death, the peace that used to govern the Fishman District once again erupted into anarchy. Times were hard back then, but after the great pirate fell, things just became worse for everyone. Thankfully for him, nothing happened on his way out. Sure, he passed several dangerous-looking fishmen, each boasting how they were better than the human race. Hearing that caused Naruto to grit his sharp teeth in anger. Humans, what a foul word. Before his parents were taken from him, he honestly didn't think much about the surface dwellers. Yes, he listened to Queen Otoheim's speeches to her people about forming a bond with humans. She would also ask them to sign a petition to promote coexistence. Most, however, were met with refusals. Even now, he kind of felt sorry for his queen. She tried so hard and got nothing but disappointment in return, and it did wrench his heart when she apparently got drunk and screamed at everyone over the loudspeakers. But for him, it was far too late to feel anything for humans, especially when they would destroy anyone's life to make a quick buck. The blonde soon stopped his self-loathing when he accidentally bumped into someone big. Looking up, Naruto's jaw dropped when he saw probably one of the biggest fishmen he ever saw in his entire life. Standing at what he believed was 9'8", the person was obviously a blue-skinned whale shark fisherman with a face that he could only compare it to a demon's. He had yellow eyebrows and sideburns, a bulb-like nose and an angular lower lip pointing upwards. A lightning-shaped scar can be seen from his left sideburn and reaching over his left eye. He had a severe underbite that possessed 2 tusk-like conical lower fangs. His long, two-toned black hair had 2 long white stripes coming from the roots over his forehead and trailing down the back, and a small tuft of hair on his chin with a slight green hue. His hands and feet were webbed, typical for a normal fishman, and his limbs were somewhat thin in comparison with his enormous girth. And finally his gills were in between his shoulders and neck. He was wearing a fancy-looking diamond-shaped karakusa with a floral design with a purple scarf like a ribbon around his waist. For the fisherman's footwear, he appeared to be wearing simple sandals on his webbed feet. Leaning forward, the large fisherman bent his knees until he could fully see the person he bumped into. "Are you okay, little one?" his rough, but kind voice asked. "Yeah, I am," Naruto stammered out. When the man offered his giant hand, the blonde happily took it before he was easily raised to his feet. "I'm sorry I bumped into you, Mr. Jinbe." The gigantic fisherman introduced himself. "The Knight of the Sea?" The blonde's blue eyes nearly bulged out of his eyes in awe that he was looking upon one of the most legendary fishmen around. Giving Naruto a chuckle in response, Jinbe patted the young boy on the head. "Now where are you going all off in a rush?" Becoming slightly flustered at the attention he was receiving, he sputtered a bit before answering. "I was heating." Before he could complete his answer, the two heard a loud crash, alerting everyone within the area. Jinbe looked over to see a giant ship that was completely wrecked at the entrance of Fishman Island. "What's going on, Mr. Jinbe?" Naruto asked the whale shark fisherman. "I honestly don't know. Let's go find out." Grabbing the boy by the back of his shirt, the former pirate captain firmly placed him on his shoulders and ran towards the site of the wreck. Before the former pirate captain could get there, there was already a crowd, an angry crowd. Many of the merpeople's eyes widened when they saw the torn sails that had the insignia of the world government, and it got worse when he saw a man with his dark green hair stick up at the top of his head, a wide, obese face with a bulbous nose, thick lips, and small slit-like eyes. The man was also wearing a white protective suit and was extremely bloody and injured. This man was Saint Josgard, a world noble. Josgard pulled a flintlock from the holster on his belt and shot it off into the air, and began screaming. "Blast it all! Those worthless fools, dying after another!" Pointing his pistol at a random fishman, and continued his haughty screaming. "You there! Fish! Bring me my mask at once! The stench of this place is simply unbearable. Hurry up and bring me my mask! Save my life, you insignificant creature, I demand it!" The entire crowd just stayed still, many glaring at the world noble. Panting loudly, the world noble shakily pointed his pistol at a mermaid. "Are you all deaf? I said bring me a doctor, I require treatment." Instead of a doctor walking forward, several large fishmen stepped forward, each carrying a firearm, and each having a tattoo of a red sun on various parts of their bodies. Saint Josgard's eyes widened in recognition and opened his fat mouth once again. It's you! My slaves! You must return with me immediately. Who gave you permission to leave, you lousy fish?" In response to the man's useless screaming, the scariest-looking fishman stepped on the noble's flintlock and kept it under his foot, much to the man's shock. The various merpeople gasped, each shouting for them to stop what they were doing, and Josgard once again screaming at them, making threats and how important he was. The scariest-looking of them sneered at him. "In the world above, you are protected by the treat of marine admirals coming to save your sorry ass." His sneer quickly twisted into an evil grin before he continued. "But we're in the depths. As long as everyone is quiet, this will be no more than an accident at sea." The fisherman's words seemed to have a strong effect, because every resident began to shout their encouragement. "Shoot him," they screamed. "Kill him," they screamed. "Make him suffer like he did to us," they screamed. "Don't you dare!" Saint Josgard screamed. "I'm an important person. You can't do this to me. You of all people, I could never forgive. Even if I tried." The fisherman screamed at the world noble before pulling the trigger. The cheering immediately died down, and the cheering soon turned to gasps of horror. On top of the world noble was a golden blonde-haired mermaid that was partially held up in two short loops. She also had green eyes, thick eyelashes, and wore pink lipstick. The mermaid was wearing a very long white kimono with a cream-colored carp scale design and a white cloth around her shoulders that somehow floated behind her head. The fishman who pulled the trigger immediately began to tear up out of shock. Queen Otoheim. Ignoring the searing pain in her right arm from where she was shot, Otoheim turned her head towards everyone. "Drop your weapons now," she commanded. "There are children watching." "Aladdin! I heard a world noble was here. Where is he?" Jinbe shouted once he arrived. Turning to face him was a tall, muscular merman with slanted thin eyes, dark hair tied in a long ponytail falling on his back in many curves, that matched his full beard with a goatee. He had long light-colored tail on the upper part, but darker near the fin area. The man wore a long, open black vest with the Sun Pirate's Jolly Roger on the left side of his stomach along with a tattoo on his left bicep that said 1TC. Clutched in his hands was a silver trident. "I don't know, I just got here myself." He then trailed off and raised an eyebrow when he saw a boy on his former boss' shoulders. But coming right behind him were the Queen's children. One being a cream-skinned muscular shark merman, with a wide chest and large arms. He had a long face, framed by blue wavy fair hair flowing down to his shoulders, a sharp and pointy nose, and some sort of dot his forehead. He had gills on his massive neck, and a dark blue tail with light blue polka dots. The only piece of clothing he wore was a purple garment around his waist, held up by an extremely long light blue long band, which passed over his shoulders, drawing a circle around the back of his neck, and falls down to his waist, seemingly floating behind him. The second was a light brown-skinned orfish merman, and was easily the tallest of the three males and extremely thin as well. He had wide eyes, long wavy orange hair, gills running along his neck, and beaver-like teeth. He also has a long purple tail with white polka dots and a red fin. Unlike the other two, he was the only one fully clothed in the upper body, wearing a fancy white robe-like garment with sleeves that are puffed at the shoulders and wrists, and an orange sash around his waist in the same manner as his eldest brother. The third was a pink-skinned rotund, stocky and large Opa merman. Like the other three, he had a polka dot tail, with a black variation along with white polka dots and red scales. He wore a blue hat with a white stripe going across the middle of it that barely covered his brown hair, and the red fins on his head. And like his eldest brother, he wore a light blue garment around his waist held in place by a yellow sash in the exact same manner as the other two. Finally, the last was a mermaid, a giant's eyes smelt whiting mermaid with short strawberry blonde hair with a fish-shaped hair grip, green eyes like her mother's, and a permanent blush on her cheeks. She had a very long light red and pink striped tail with broadly striped tail ends and a ruffle around her waist. The only piece of clothing she wore was a cream-colored crop top with floating straps. Naruto really didn't pay attention to what they were saying. Instead, he kept his eyes on the queen. He saw her begging them not to harm the noble, for the sake of the children. He saw her telling them not to pass their hatred on to the next generation. But her speech fell deaf on the world nobles. With an insane glee in his eyes, Saint Josgard picked up his discarded pistol and pointed it at his queen's head. Jinbe saw the action and opened his mouth to shout out a warning. But suddenly his shoulders felt heavy, like 10 pounds were suddenly dropped on him. Then he felt light as a feather and saw Naruto springing at the world noble with a roar of furious outrage escaping from his mouth. The roar was soon silenced as the blonde's mouth firmly clamped onto Josgard's gun arm, his teeth digging into the soft flesh of his hand and his gun, snapping the deadly weapon in half. As the noble fell back in a loud scream of pain, Otohime immediately turned around to see a boy that barely looked to be about 8 years old. At first she thought he was a human with his lack of webbed hands and feet, tan skin, and messy blonde hair. But taking a closer look, she saw the telltale gills on his neck, the dorsal fin on his back, the black tiger stripes running along his arms, a few on his fin, and oddly enough 3 thin ones on each side of his cheeks. But most importantly, his sharp teeth tearing into Saint Josgard's hand. She went to raise her arm to stop him, but then she saw the boy's eyes. His eyes that were the color of the sea were filled with so much hate and rage. The sight of a child having eyes like that brought tears to her eyes. "You little freak!" Saint Josgard screamed at Naruto. Violently flinging his bloody hand towards his ship, the sudden movement forced the tiger shark fishman to tear great chunks of flesh, muscle, and most importantly his thumb and index from his hand. While he cried in absolute pain, the boy hit the ship hard enough to normally kill a child. While he was sniveling about the loss of his precious fingers and his royal blood being spilled by a lowly fish, he did take pleasure in his superior mind that the boy was now dead for his sins. Or that's what he thought until he heard an angry groan coming from his ship. Fearfully turning his head, he saw Naruto getting to his feet. Everyone saw him spitting the man's fingers and flesh from his mouth, and the promise of violence in his eyes as his body looked like it expanding with muscle and adrenaline. Jinbe's eyes widened when the boy raised his right arm and punched the hull of the ship, causing the hull to quake and shatter upon impact. Screaming out in terror, Saint Josgard brought his left hand down to his hip holster, and brought out his second and last pistol. Shakily raising it at the enraged fishman, tears of terror spilled from his eyes, and snot dripped down his nose. "What the hell are you?" he screamed when a sudden terrible smell came from his pants, and a vision of a defiant bull shark fishman he killed 1.5 years ago replaced the boy attacking him. Then for the first time in his entire life the noble put 2 and 2 together, and gave off a wicked chuckle. "Now I see it, you're the spawn of that fish and mermaid. Ha! Well then, die with your wretched family." Naruto's eyes widened from the noble's confession. He clutched his head within his hands. His mind processed what Mjaskard said before he screamed a heart-wrenching scream of sorrow and denial. His eyes that were once blue slowly became as crimson as freshly spilled blood. Baring his bloody teeth hatefully at the world noble, he bolted towards him, tearing up the ground with each step as his rage poured out of him. While this was happening, a 6-year-old Shirahoshi, not used to the violent nature she was witnessing, began to cry. Raising her head upwards, she screamed at it all to stop at the top of her lungs. Her screams echoed throughout the entire ocean, causing the ground to underneath them to shake and crumble, before bursting to reveal 3 gigantic sea kings, the biggest of them devouring the noble's ship. Many people shrieked in terror. Saint Mjaskard fainted with a good amount of foam falling from his mouth. All except Naruto. He just stared impassively at the 3 creatures before letting out a threatening roar. To the second shock of those still conscious, the 3 sea kings let out a submissive whimper and slightly lowered their gigantic heads. With a growl escaping his throat, the blonde started walking towards the unconscious world noble. Every merfolk gathered there took a step back when they saw the determination to kill the noble in his crimson eyes. Otoheim, however, couldn't allow him, a child, to stain his hands with another's blood, and flowed over in front of the noble, blocking him with her arms wide open. Naruto didn't even stop when he saw his queen in front of him. He was too far deep in his anger that he flexed his right hand. His small muscles bulging, he geared up to attack the 2 of them. Everyone panicked when his fist lashed out at the queen's face. The women shrieked out in terror. The men moved to stop him, but it was useless when the tiger shark fishman stopped just inches from her face. Tears spilled from his eyes when they returned to their true blue color. Just looking at Otoheim's determined face stopped him from going through with his murderous deed, and seeing her daughter, who looked no older than 6, crying for everything to stop, he couldn't do that to another child, especially when it happened to him. Feeling 2 gentle arms wrap around his shoulders, Naruto collapsed from exhaustion into the warm embrace of his queen, fully spent from the amount of energy he used today. The mermaid princess, and the sea king at the same exact moment. Jinbe whispered to himself in disbelief. Turning his giant head towards the queen, he saw her ask his former crewmate to take care of the human. "It will be done, my queen," Aladdin reluctantly said, "but what of the boy?" "I will take care of him myself," Otoheim told him as she gently picked the boy into her arms. Several hours passed after the incident at the front gate, yet King Neptune was not satisfied just hearing about it from one person. As king, he needed to hear all the accounts. So far he listened to Aladdin, then Hody Jones. His wife was currently with their daughter to keep her calm. So far he didn't like being what he was told. But now he was asking his most trusted friend, Jinbe. The king was a giant-sized and muscular coelacanth merman. He had a dark red nose, small eyes, and long thick orange curly hair, eyebrows, and beard. The merman was bare-chested, revealing a thick amount of hair on his chest and arms, and he had matching black tattoos on both arms, which looked like spirals with wavy protrusion designs around it. The only things that would be considered clothing was a golden crown that resembled a tulip with jewels embedded on the base of it, a golden bracelet on each of his wrists, and a golden trident with an elaborate design laying near him. At his side was Ho, a gigantic whale that was his pet, as well as his transportation. The mammal was black in color with a light underbelly, a set of rounded teeth and round eyes. He was wearing an elaborate crown on his head, and a bubble ring to swim through the air since he wasn't in the water at the moment. "Jinbe," Neptune's sophisticated voice said to the former captain of the Sun Pirates. "I want to know what happened at the entrance, and why a world noble is missing his fingers, and a young fisherman in one of the guest rooms." Bowing in response, the whale shark fisherman began telling his king from his own point of view. "My lord, it all started out when I bumped into the young boy on my way here." He came from the fisherman district. Seeing his king narrow his eyebrows at the mere mention of that crime-ridden place, Jinbe sighed a bit. "I know, your majesty, I don't like that place either, but he is just a child who lost his parents." "I know that," Neptune said. "It just breaks my heart seeing that my intention for good backfired." After a moment of self-brooding, the king motioned for Jinbe to continue. "After I introduced myself, we both heard a loud crash, and I took him with me to investigate. I thought it would be a good idea at the time, my king." He defended himself a tiny bit when he saw Neptune raise an eyebrow at him. "When we got there, I saw Queen Otoheim defending the world noble from being killed by the angry members of my former crew after a bullet grazed her. She then gave a speech about not passing the hatred on to the children." Giving the king a feigned smile, Jinbe said, "It struck a chord in me, at least until the world noble tried to shoot her. Before I could attempt to stop him, the boy flew from my shoulders and attacked him. I saw the boy bite clean through the gun and into the noble's hand. The man screamed out in pain before flinging his off his hand, taking his fingers and a good part of his hand with him. When the boy hit the hull of the ship, I thought he snapped his neck. But he didn't, did he? Neptune asked. No, instead the boy got back up, and I saw his eyes. Your Majesty, the boy's eyes that were blue when I met him were pure blood red. Not just his sclera, iris, or even his pupil. They were all completely blood red. That's not all what normally should have been a weak 10-year-old, at least until he hit puberty. He destroyed the hull of the ship, tore up the ground underneath him, and him normal arms bulged with muscle that he shouldn't have. Neptune's black eyes widened in realization. Jinbi, surely you don't mean the boy has the— I do, my lord. The boy has what I like to call Sea King mode, an incredible power that grants him the strength, anger, and ferocity of a Sea King. From what I saw, he had the crimson red eyes, the muscle expansion, the high immunity to pain with what I suspect was a high amount of adrenaline, the intense bloodlust, and most importantly the submissive nature from the 3 Sea Kings your daughter summoned. King Neptune leaned back and rubbed his bearded chin with his left hand. Within the entire history of the Ryugu Kingdom there existed 3 legends. The first being the Tamarabeko, a mystical box that was capable of making anyone older, and rumored to be held with the royal family, something he would neither confirm nor deny. The second being the mermaid princess, of a mermaid capable of speaking with Sea Kings every few hundred years, which was apparently his only daughter Shirahoshi. And the third and final legend was the Sea King, just like the mermaid princess, only every few hundred years a fisherman was granted with the power of the Sea Kings. What do you suppose we do, old friend? Neptune asked. If we leave this matter alone, there will be a catastrophe on our hands. Otoheim and I can handle things with Shirahoshi, but what shall we do with the boy? I will handle things with the boy, my king, Jinbi told him. But don't you have your duties as one of the 7 warlords? I have not been given any duties from the world government. I will train the boy for as long as I can, and if I have to, I will take him with me to see the world and introduce him to the various cultures of the world. And of course lessen his hatred on humanity. The former sun pirate responded. Then let it be done, Neptune said to him. While the king and warlord were chatting in the throne room, Otoheim found herself standing in front of the room Naruto was sleeping in. After assuring Shirahoshi that everything was fine, the queen found herself in thinking about the nameless blonde tiger shark that nearly killed the world noble. When she saw his eyes that were as blue as the sea, she saw that he experienced the tragedy of losing his parents, something that nearly broke him and brought the hatred of humanity in his heart. Opening the door, Otoheim entered the low-lit room to see the boy peacefully sleeping in a medium-sized bed. Almost floating towards him, the queen slowly brought her right hand towards his tan face, gently placing her index finger on one of his whiskered cheeks. Then to her surprise the boy leaned into her hand. Mom! She heard him whisper out. Giving a sad smile, the queen stayed like that for the longest time, just keeping the fisherman company like a mother would do for a child. The serene moment was soon interrupted by a soft knocking on the door. Come in, she gently called out. The door opened to reveal Jinbi. The gigantic fisherman knelt down to poke his head through the 6-foot-tall door. My queen, may I have a word with you? Reluctantly pulling his hand away from the boy's head, she bent over to give him a motherly kiss on his forehead to keep him at ease before leaving the room. After quietly closing the door, Otoheim tuned to Jinbi. What did my husband say? After hearing all sides of the incident from Aladdin, Hody, and myself, we both came to the conclusion that the boy should stay here in the palace. As soon as he awakes, I will start training. Jinbi's sentence was immediately cut off when Otoheim jumped to his height and bopped him on the head. Blinking in surprise, the former pirate captain looked down at the goldfish mermaid. You will not be training him, the queen said to him. You saw what happened to him today. What that boy needs is love, and a family right now, not learning how to fight. But my queen, the whale shark fisherman protested. Poking the former pirate captain in the stomach, Otoheim continued to protest his decision, poking his stomach with each and every word. I know what he is, Jinbi. Like Shirahoshi, he's one of the legends that have been passed down for generations. He needs to learn that not all humans are like the noble he met today. Please just trust me on this. Rubbing his stomach, Jinbi could only, and reluctantly nod at his queen's logic. But you may want to take that with your husband. Just leave him to me. The queen smiled at him. Almost an hour later, Naruto awoke from his sleep. Grumbling about the stupid floor, he placed his hands on the soft floor. Wait a second, the floor wasn't soft. His eyes widening, he threw the royal blue sheets off and fell to the floor. His bare feet feeling the carpet, he bolted towards the door. Frantically slamming the door open, the blonde's breath hitched when he saw the marble walls and the fancy decorations. No, he whispered to himself, I've been captured. Hearing the sound of footsteps and chattering voices, Naruto ran in the opposite direction. The sound of his bare feet clapping against the tiles, his head frantically searching for any exits that he could find. He didn't care if it was an air duct, a door, or even a window to jump out of. Anything was better than the unspeakable things the king would do for killing the queen. Skidding to a stop when he heard voices around the corners, the tiger shark fishman frantically searched for a way out. There were no doors near him. Soldiers were coming from each side of the hallways. The only thing in front of his was a balcony. With the need to survive overpowering his sense of judgment, he sped towards the balcony and jumped off it. Immediately he knew that was not a good idea when he saw nothing but a garden. Oh sure. Meanwhile below the balcony Shirahoshi was happily clapping to her brothers, Raboshi and Manboshi, doing a wild and silly dance in front of her while Fukaboshi stood on the side with a humorous smile on his face. While his younger brothers were entertaining the only sister he had in the world, his mind was in another place. More specifically, it was on the events from a few hours ago when he saw that tiger shark fishman, well, the term would be fish boy as he should rightfully call him, and his pure savagery against the world noble. Thankfully his younger siblings were more or less ignorant, or too shocked to hear what transpired between that horrible man and the young boy. Shaking his head, he honestly couldn't believe that a boy barely a year older than his sister went through so much in the years where one was normally showered with love and affection. But the most important was his intense hatred of humans. The first prince himself didn't know too much about humanity, except what his mother taught him and all the children who came for her lessons. But her lessons included their society, their achievements, and most importantly their acts of kindness towards each other. The noble, however, dashed many of those lessons out the window, showing him that his mother was sugar-coating the truth. Any more thoughts on the matter were interrupted when he heard a long running of teas. Looking upwards, his siblings and himself saw the blonde falling out of the sky. He hit a surface that broke his fall. It wasn't the ground or the flowers. No, it was his little sister's head. The fishman bounced right off her forehead, and then violently hit the ground with a loud thump. The two younger brothers screamed in surprise and immediately went to calm their teary-eyed sister. Fukaboshi turned his head towards the tiger shark fishman he was just thinking of, suppressing a chuckle when he saw his spiraling eyes and exaggerated bump on his head. The merman wiggled on over to his unconscious form and started poking his forehead with his tail. A minute later Naruto irritably whacked whatever was prodding him in the forehead. "Ugh, can someone tell me the name of the ship that hit me?" he muttered to himself. "The ship, as you called her, was my little sister." An unfamiliar voice alerted the blonde. His eyes widening, Naruto slowly turned his head to see the semi-familiar face of Prince Fukaboshi. Immediately panicking, he sprang to his feet and got into a sloppy fighting stance. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, please don't kill me." "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Fukaboshi asked. Hearing the calmness in the merman's voice, the tiger shark fishman lowered his arms. Seeing that the prince held a look of confusion instead of anger, the thought that he killed the queen lessened quite a bit. But he still wasn't fully convinced and asked one of the dumbest things in his short life. "The queen, is she okay?" "Mother is fine, exhausted from today's events, but in perfect health," the first prince said. Sighing in relief, the feeling of immense guilt was lifted from the blonde's shoulders, only to be replaced by 2 more weights when he was tackled by the other mermen, and got into a small scuffle with them. Fukaboshi squinted his eyes to see what was exactly going inside the cloud of dust, at least until a pebble flew out from the cloud and smacked him in between the eyes. "That's it. You 3 knock it off." Immediately the dust cloud died down, revealing Naruto pushing his right big toe up Raboshi's nose, while the orphish merman was strangling said foot while his tail was wrapped around the fishman's waist. And Manboshi was currently chomping on the blonde's head, even though Naruto's left arm was putting him in a headlock, causing Shirahoshi to giggle a bit. "Now I'm going to ask 3 questions," the shark merman said to him after the 3 disengaged from each other. "First, I want to know how you got in the garden. Second, where did you come from? And finally, who are you?" "First of all, my name is Uzumaki Naruto," Naruto said to him. "I came from the Fishman district and somehow ended up here. Finally, I jumped out of a window to fly out of here." He finished with a tone filled with sarcasm. This, however, was lost on the 3 younger siblings, who gasped in awe. Letting out a chuckle of amusement, Fukaboshi reached out and patted Naruto on the shoulder. He honestly didn't know why his mother brought the young tiger shark fishman into their home, whether it was impulsive, something she was insanely famous for, or planned after what he saw that day. He would do his best to make sure that whatever his mother's plans for him came to fruition. "You can really fly? That's so cool." Shirahoshi giggled in excitement. Bouncing up and down on her tail, the mermaid started clapping. "Do it again, do it again." Nervously scratching the back of his head, Naruto replied, "I'm afraid I can't right now." "Please?" The gigantic mermaid clasped her hands together and gave him the adorable gigantic teary-eyed look. Seeing the fishmen in a pickle, Riboshi and Manboshi gained two mischievous looks on their faces. Don't worry, sis. Manboshi started. He just needs a little help to get started. Riboshi finished. In a balcony overlooking the garden, King Neptune, Queen Odoheim, and Jinbe looked over the 5 children with smiles on their faces. They seemed to be interacting pretty well. At least until the 2 youngest mermen grabbed Naruto under his arms and threw him into the air. That only caused them to laugh when Shirahoshi giggled in amusement. Am I right? Or am I right? Odoheim's sweet, yet all-knowing voice echoed in the male's ears. Letting out a sigh of exasperation, Neptune nodded in defeat. Okay, my dear, we see your point. Young Nakuto will stay with us so he can learn to master the gift within him. It's Naruto, my king. Jinbe reprimanded the god of the sea, even though it was a small quirk in his king's personality. But right now let's leave him be and have a normal childhood like other children should have. Giving a laugh of agreement, Neptune continued to look down on the now playing children, none of them knowing that the future they envisioned would spiral completely out of control. What did you do this time? Odoheim asked as she crossed her arms over her chest. She tried to keep a stern face, but was failing to hold in her laughs. Hanging in front of her were none other than Naruto, thanks to the 3 royal knights guarding him, 2 flanking the one in the middle with his webbed hand on the scruff of Naruto's shirt. The guard's armor, that normally consisted of large striped snail shells as helmets and shoulder pads, weren't their normal color of white and black. Instead they were neon pink and burnt orange respectively. The one holding a grinning Naruto stepped forward, revealing himself to be a gray-skinned great white shark fishman. He had a bulged belly, but muscular arms and legs betrayed that one trait, for the fishman held an aura of power. He had glaring eyes, with long and distinctive eyelashes, a mouth full of sharp, triangular teeth, and a stubbed nose. He was the only one without a helmet to reveal his long curly black hair, with a long tuft hanging on the left part of his face. Slamming the trident in his right hand on the ground, the fishman told the queen just exactly what he did. Your Majesty, we found this one committing unspeakable vandalism to the royal knight's armor. After being caught, we gave chase and, he indited towards the blonde, narrowing his eyes as he did so. It took us over 3 hours to catch him. I do not know how or why he did it, but this cannot stand, my queen. I agree. Odoheim responded with a barely contained smile. Please take Naruto-chan to his room. The king and I will have a serious discussion with him. Giving a bow to her, the 3 knights split off into 3 separate directions. So, Mr. Knight, you're not entirely mad that I defaced your armor, are you? Naruto asked after they left the queen's presence. Of course I am. The knight barked out in anger. Not only did you single-handedly deface some very expensive armor that may have to be scrapped, but you also put itching powder into our clothes, and dulled our weapons. And I keep telling you my name is Hody Jones, you little runt. Remember it. Not even fazed by the fishman's yelling, Naruto crossed his arms in front of him. Those things are only minor annoyances with no permanent damage, Hody Jones. Besides, you will thank me in the long run. He cleaned his ear with his pinky as he hung from the great white fishman's left hand by the scruff of his yukata, who looked puzzled by the brat's response. Thank you? Why would I thank a little brat like you for making my life a living hell for the last 2 weeks? Just think about it. Naruto's voice took a sudden chill that surprised Hody, as he turned towards the fishman, his eyes and mouth in a malign grimace. The royal guard is supposed to protect the royal family, yet not once, not twice, but 3 times I have pranked you guys. Did it ever cross your mind that if a child could somehow sneak past you of all people, who says a professional assassin couldn't do the same thing, but instead of defacing your armor he slits your throats, and then assassinates the royal family? Hody couldn't believe what this kid had said, yet has made a point. A very interesting point. His intense eyes widening, Hody gave a shark-like grin before bursting into laughter. Jahahaha. That's quite the dark mind you have there, boy, disguising something simple as a prank to teach us a lesson. I grew up in the Fishman district, that place changes people. The blonde deadpanned. No shit, kid, I grew up there. Hody grunted in reply once he got to Naruto's designated room. Opening the door, he dropped the tiger shark fishman into it. Now that you got your message across, I will inform everyone to up their efforts in protecting the royal family. Slamming the door shut, Hody Jones didn't see the unofficial member of the royal family opening his mouth and walked away. An interesting brat, he thought to himself. Then he split his face with an ominous grin. No, the perfect brat. I've always dreamed of mauling a world noble like that. Maybe one day, he could be of use. Yes. I could obtain the power of the Sea King for myself. I only need. His eyes looked towards the young tiger shark who hummed, blissfully unaware. A little push in the right direction. After Hody literally dropped Naruto into his room, the blonde found himself sitting on the small bed, his human fingers gently caressing the fine silk fabric that seemed alien to him. Moving his blue eyes, he honestly couldn't believe that he was in a room that wasn't filled with dirt, garbage, and completely wrecked. His eyes settled onto the giant desk that was 5 feet away from his bed. On it were two things that he couldn't tear his eyes away from. The first being a giant-sized mirror with golden trimmings and pearls embedded within it. When he looked at his reflection, he saw nothing but a complete stranger. The dirty street clothes that he was used to wearing, his somewhat dirty skin, and his unruly blonde hair were gone. In their place was someone he just didn't recognize, that was completely clean and wearing a white yukata and an orange sash. Getting off his bed, Naruto walked over to the second object on his desk. It was a photograph with a simple wooden frame. Sitting down in the wicker chair pulled by his desk, picking it up in his hands, a small, sad smile etched onto his face. In the photo were 3 people, the first being a 6-foot-tall gray-skinned bull shark fisherman with blonde hair with jaw-length bangs framing both sides of his face, bright blue eyes, and a real toothy smile. He was wearing a blue shirt with the sleeves torn off, tattered white shorts that reached his shins, and an iron fishing spear clutched in his right hand. The second was a beautiful dolphin-tailed mermaid with a slender, but feminine build, fair skin, bright red hair that reached her flippers, with strands that framed both sides of her smiling face, the left of which was parted by a yellow clip and violet eyes. The only piece of clothing she was wearing was a red bikini top that held in her decently sized breasts. And finally, the third person was a younger Naruto, smiling brightly as he held both his parents' hands. "It sure doesn't feel like it's been 2 years," he said to himself. "It feels much longer than that, hasn't it? Mom, Dad, I honestly don't know what to think. I feel so out of place here. 2 weeks ago I was living on the streets and doing odd jobs for the various criminals within the Fishman district. But then, after biting off your killer's fingers, I'm in the Ryuji Palace of all places for something that I felt was justified." Hearing no response from the picture, the blonde let out a sad chuckle. "I'll thank Jinbe for bringing this back to me from my hut, I promise you all that. I just hope you guys are resting in peace, and I hope to see you too when I eventually die." Unknown to him, Otohime was standing outside with her ear pressed against the door. She wiped away a slight tear spilling from her left green eye when she heard the sorrow in his voice. Taking a calm breath, the goldfish mermaid brought her dainty right hand up and knocked on his door. "Naruto, can I please come in?" Hearing a yes in confirmation, she opened the door and found the tiger shark fishman sitting on the wicker chair by his desk. "I know why you're here, Your Highness. And I'm sorry for doing it." Naruto apologized. "Naruto, I'm not mad," Otohime said to him. "But I must know, what's making you act this way?" Poking his head in emphasis, she continued. "I know that readjusting from the streets may be hard for you, but I want to understand." "My queen, it's not easy to explain," the tiger shark fishman said to her. Opening his mouth to continue, Naruto found himself interrupted when he found himself pulled into Otohime's comforting hug. They separated, the young blonde tiger shark's shocked eyes staring into the kind, understanding ones of the goldfish mermaid. "I have all the time in the world." While Otohime was dealing with Naruto, Jinbe was unfortunately dealing with Saint Josgard once again. Dear Neptune, the man was testing his patience. Every single day since the man woke up, all he did was complain. He complained about the food, the medical treatment, the uncomfortable bed, the doctors and nurses, and most importantly the loss of his right thumb and index finger, and of course his demand that the monster who did this to him to be put to death. "Are you even listening?" Josgard screamed at the whale shark fishman. "I want that water breather's head right in front of me now. And I keep telling you I will not heed to your regards, Saint Josgard. That boy defended the queen that you threatened to kill. It may have been overkill, but at least you are still breathing. You should be grateful." Jinbe calmly responded to the extremely spoiled noble. "That is not good enough." The world noble literally spat at him. "I am a descendant of the 20 kings, the creators of the world government. The creators of order and peace in a world of injustice and discord. By birthright I am superior to you in each and every way. And if you don't comply, you abomination, I will have you killed as well." Before Josgard could even complete his threat, Jinbe raised his right fist and easily punched a hole as wide as he was tall in the wall. "My patience is wearing thin with you, noble," Jinbe growled out, his glaring eyes silencing the Tenyrbito. "Normally I would settle this diplomatically, but you forced my hand." Reaching his giant hand into his karakusa, he pulled out a den mushi, not a regular one, but a small black one. Seeing Saint Josgard's already pasty white skin turn even whiter, the warlord gave him a victorious grin. "I assume you're familiar with the black den mushi, From the very second you were admitted, I have been sending every threat and confessions you made at me. Still pale as a ghost, the noble gave a nervous smile and laughed at him. That's your ace in the hole? You stupid fool, who could possibly be listening? We control a vast majority of the civilized world, the Marines obey our every command, and no insignificant pirate will even do something to us no matter how high his bounty is. Who do you think can even make us think twice? The Gorosei, Jinbe responded, causing the noble to shut his mouth in horror and to pale in an unbelievable shade of white. And I must say none of them are remotely happy with your actions toward my people. Suddenly a black snail popped out of its portable device, opening his mouth, an old voice that contained much wisdom. What Jinbe says is true, St. Josgard. We are most displeased with what transpired down there. Feeling extremely ill, Josgard sputtered in denial and shock. No! What you have been hearing are lies. I knew he was carrying it. Quit lying! An older raspy voice shouted at him, only this one sounded like a man who experienced many wars. We are not as dumb as you may have thought yourself to believe. Don't you know what you've done? Not only have you caused a near fallout between humans and fishmen by attempting to shoot their queen, you have also threatened one of our Shichibukai. He's inferior! The saint screamed in response, tears started welling in his eyes and snot falling from his nose, showing that he was growing desperate. That stupid fish has no right. No right! He's nothing but a lowly pirate that sold himself to you. He knows this all too well. A younger sounding voice responded. But regardless, he formed a pact with us, and we need someone like him within our ranks, so our decision overrules yours. Gulping loudly, the noble made one desperate attempt to defend himself. You can't be serious. We are human beings, the mightiest species in the entire world. We can beat them, no, we can exterminate them. Wipe them from the face of the earth with the power of our military. That won't happen. A voice as old as the first one, but filled with a slight tiredness, responded. We will not have a pointless war with Fishman Island. Even with all our military might, there will be pointless casualties on both sides. And all that bloodshed for what? Because a young fishman bit off your fingers for defending the queen? I think not, St. Josgard. But. No more buts. The final voice, filled with anger and arrogance, barked out at him. When you have recovered, we are demanding you return to Mariehua so we can discuss your punishment. Pupu punishment. But why? You're like us. We're relatives. All of us. Why? You're also nobles too, so why? Because we are enlightened. We let you and our other relatives live on a whim, or perhaps it's sentimentality. Now comply with the queen, or else. After the transmission ended, Jinbe gave the world noble a superior look and left the room, just missing the man fainting from shock. Many untold hours later, Otoheim gently ran her fingers through Naruto's spiky blonde hair. While the tiger shark fishman was blissfully asleep, the queen took that time to digest everything he told her. It honestly shocked her to learn that a boy, barely a year older than her daughter, went through so much hardship in his life. The goldfish mermaid learned that after spending 4 blissful years with his parents, who were suddenly taken right out of his life, was almost immediately purged into a life of crime. She heard the rumors of the Fishman district, her husband's worst failure in his career as king of Ryuji Kingdom, but she didn't want to believe any of it. Whether it was denial for the love of her husband to overlook his mistakes, or denial that such a place existed. But she had the living proof sleeping in her lap. A boy who should have been in school, or at least learning from his parents, was instead beating other kids, and sometimes adults, for his territory, being a drug mule, and even, to her increasing horror, pit fights where the children beat each other half to death while the adults bet on who would win. Never again will you have to endure that, Naruto-kun. She whispered to him. I promise that after we get the reverie, I will dedicate my time to fix the Fishman district. That's a promise, so that no one can ever go through any of that ever again. After putting the young tiger shark fishman to bed, and tucking him in, Otoheim gently kissed his forehead with a smile and left him to sleep. After shutting the door, she was surprised to see Jinbe almost in front of her. Sorry to disturb you, my queen. The former captain of the Sun Pirates apologized. But I had a feeling you would be with the young one after the incident with the royal armor. He held in a small chuckle when he remembered seeing several dozen knights in that horrendous armor chasing after a certain blonde. You would be right, Jinbe, Otoheim responded. So how have the negotiations with the world noble been? Did you finally convince him to finally forgive Naruto? I did. The Knight of the Sea boldly lied to her. Placing her right hand on her chest, the queen sighed in relief. That's good. Thank you, Jinbe. Is it all right for me to see him? I'm sorry, but I just put him to bed. He had a mentally exhausting day. Seeing the whale shark fisherman raise an eyebrow, Otoheim explained what she meant. Naruto told me exactly what goes on in the fisherman district. I see. Jinbe winced a bit. Compared to many others like Arlong or Macro, he was one of the lucky ones. Because of his size, he wasn't a target for muggings or the usual beatdowns. He joined Neptune's military as soon as he reached the appropriate age, and basically got out of the life before it could even pull him in. I'll speak with him another time then. Farewell, my queen. Bowing as low as he could, the gigantic fisherman walked away. A week later we find Naruto and Shirahoshi in the garden where they first officially met. But he wasn't exactly a happy camper with the gigantic mermaid constantly decorating his head with flowers. Is this really necessary, Shira-chan? Naruto asked while his right eyebrow twitched in annoyance. Everyone was watching them, the guards sniggering as the young princess continued to place another crown of flowers on his head, making him look like he had a multicolored afro. Of course it is, Naruto-chan, it makes you look so pretty. Shirahoshi giggled in response. I must agree, it does make you look rather pretty, Naruto-chan. His right eye twitching in severe annoyance, Naruto turned his head to see Fukaboshi coming towards them, a playful smile on his face, and a golden trident clutched in his right hand. Very funny, Prince Fukaboshi, very funny. The blonde tiger shark fisherman gritted out and turned his eyes away in annoyance. What's with the trident? You going to try out for the guard or something? Not after what you did to them. Fukaboshi replied to him. But now that I'm older, father said that it would be a good idea for me to start practicing with my weapon of choice. Stamping the butt of the weapon on the ground, he gave a massive grin. So like my father, I chose the trident. You better hurry, Naruto, or you'll never surpass me. Oh yeah. Naruto jumped to his feet and gave an intimidating stare that horribly failed due to his flower afro. I haven't been sitting on my butt during my entire stay here. Every day I work on my cardio and the muscles in my arms. I'll catch up to you soon. Shaking his head in an amused manner, the first prince knew that the blonde wasn't boasting like his younger brothers. Underneath his white yukata was a body that was quite sturdy, not remotely muscular because of his young age, but not fat either. Maybe one day, Naruto, but right now I need you take your wig off and have the two of you follow me. Sticking his tongue out at the elder merman, the blonde took the monstrous flower ornament off his head, and followed the first son of the king with the giant child mermaid trailing beside him. After exiting the garden, the two children following the teenager entered a hallway adorned with literally hundreds of paintings. Couldn't help but stare at the various large-scale portraits of members of the royal family, various knights from the past, and a few humans. The four most striking portraits were one of King Neptune when he was in his prime. Granted, he was still a giant, and had a shorter beard, but he was quite fetching in his armor. The second was a tall, pale blue-skinned blue shark fisherman with small, round white eyes, gill-like facial markings under his eyes and on his shoulders, and sharp triangular teeth. His hair, that was a dull blue color, was in the form of a shark fin. While he was wearing the royal knight's armor, his weapon of choice was something rather unusual. It looked like a sword, a very big sword, almost as tall as the wielder actually. From what Naruto saw, at the tip of the giant sword's handle was a small skull, but oddly enough the entire blade was wrapped in thick bandages. The third had two human men in it. The first was a tall man who wore a long red captain's coat and a red captain's hat with a Jolly Roger depicting a smiling skull with a thick curvy mustache on its upper lip and two bones behind it. Beneath his coat, he wore a blue shirt and had a green sash around his waist. He had a white cravat around his neck, wore dark blue pants, and what appeared to be black sea boots. The man's most prominent physical features were thick black chin-length black hair, a curved black mustache, a fierce grin, and intense black eyes which showed an unyielding spirit. The second was a broad-chested muscular man with short strawberry blonde hair, round glasses and black facial hair, which were arranged in four stripe-like patterns across his lower jaw, and a scar over his right eye. He was wearing a t-shirt with an ornately decorated collar, white pants and a simple pair of black sandals. Finally, the last painting held another human. An abnormally large human. In fact, it looked like he even towered over Jinbe, but unlike the Knight of the Sea, he was well proportioned. The man had a long face, plowed because of the advanced age with many wrinkles around his yellow eyes, a white crescent-shaped mustache, and was very muscular, and had many scars running along his chest. The man wore a black bandana around his head and adorned himself with a white captain's coat which hung loosely from his broad shoulders, and wore light, loose pants tucked inside his large black boots, and a dark blue sash around his waist. Finally, clutched in his large right hand was a massive bicento. Brother Fukaboshi, where are you taking us? And what's up with all these paintings? Shirahoshi asked as she looked in awe at the marvelous paintings. Looking over to his gigantic sister, the first son of Neptune grinned. I'm taking you both to the gallery, dear sister. It's where many works of art are created here by none other than the Montessard family for generations. But why are we heading there? Naruto questioned. You'll find out soon. Bringing his lower lip out in a mock pout, Naruto crossed his arms and continued to follow the shark merman. Soon enough the three entered a large, lavish room with red silk curtains, royal furniture, and to Naruto and Shirahoshi's surprise and horror was a extremely tan two-spot octopus merman almost the size of King Neptune. It wasn't his species, but what he was wearing. He was, for the better term, feminine. With a womanly face and long curly blonde hair tied off into a ponytail, he could easily be passed off as a woman. Except for his flamboyant clothes, which consisted of a baby blue beret, an orange ascot tied around his neck, a neon pink shirt with white roses adorning the silk fabric that was buttoned down to reveal his chest, a royal purple sash, and cherry red sunglasses that covered his eyes. Noticing the three entering the room, the odd merman smiled and bowed towards the three. Prince Fukaboshi, said, "It's good to see you arrived on time. See, others were getting zancy." He greeted them with an odd accent. "Thank you, Montague. We honestly can't thank you enough for doing this on such short notice." Fukaboshi replied to the octopus merman. "Think nothing of it, my prince. For Zen generations my family has painted for the royal family. Zet is always a pleasure, especially when Zet's a family portrait." "Paint?" Naruto asked. "I'm sorry, Mr. Painter, but if this is a family portrait, why am I here?" "I think that is obvious," Otoheim's voice replied as the doors in the room opened, revealing the rest of the royal family. "What's obvious?" the blonde asked in confusion. Giggling in response, the queen practically floated over to him and kneeled down to his eye level. "Naruto, we all have been talking, and we all decided to be your new parents." The blonde's heart stopped, and his mouth was agape. "My. What?" "Ho ho ho ho." Neptune let out his unique laugh. "Naruto, my boy, what my wife is trying to say is we would like you to be part of our family. Would you like that?" His blue eyes widening in complete surprise, Naruto turned his head towards Fukahoshi, the eldest of the three brothers who were always kind and respected him. He smiled and nodded his head. He then looked over to Manboshi and Roboshi, the two brothers who tussled with him at times but always made him laugh when he was feeling down. They gave him their usual goofy grins and a giant thumbs up. Then looking up at Shirahoshi, the young mermaid who already treated him no differently than the others, eagerly nodding her head up and down waiting for his answer. And finally the king and queen, the two who brought him into their home, and treated him like he was one of their own, were giving him inviting smiles. "Hi," Naruto began with a flustered look, "I thought I was already part of the family." Letting out a loud laugh, Neptune brought his giant arms out to the sides. "Then come over here, and let it be official, my boy." Immediately a loud clapping noise echoed throughout the room. Darting their eyes, they saw Montague with massive anime-styled tears falling from his glasses-covered eyes. "Beautiful! Simply beautiful! Everyone gather together, I must say this." Pulling a gigantic easel, white canvas, and painting supplies from behind his back, which Neptune instantly concluded was some sort of devil fruit power, he brought his right hand out with his paintbrush clenched in his fist and his thumb pointed up. Deciding that a celebration would be held later, the family gathered together for their first family portrait. Once in position, Montague began painting with his gigantic brush. Not only was he using his right hand, but he was also using 6 of his 8 octopus legs. The image in front of his cherry red sunglasses coming to life, the texture, the shadowing, the pure raw emotion on the family's faces. Hours passed in what seemed like minutes. The flamboyant artist was perspiring, his blonde hair matted, and his glasses slipped to the bridge of his nose, exposing his bright green eyes, but his smile never faded once. Finally letting out a sigh, the octopus merman took a final look at the painting and placed his painting materials behind his back. "See, it is done," he happily announced. Turning the easel around to face the family, he took in great delight at seeing their satisfied smiles at his latest masterpiece. At the top of was the humongous king, Neptune, smiling with his eyes curved and arms crossed. At his left and right were Roboshi and Manboshi, flexing their muscles, which looked rather comically. In the center was Shirahoshi and Fukaboshi in front of the giant mermaid and crossing his arms like his father and smiling. Shirahoshi had her chin on the shark merman, her smiling beaming like a sun. And below Shirahoshi and Fukaboshi was Otoheim with her hands cupped and in front in an elegant pose. Her smile was the brightest of all as she stared out. And next to her and below all of them was Naruto, who was weeping tears of joy. Even though it looked as if he was wailing, he was immensely happy due to his open, vibrant blue eyes. For he now had a new family. One more week passed by, and come Monday all the inhabitants of Fishman Island were crowding around the entrance to the island. Today every man and woman were glaring at the world noble beginning to board the ship to the surface. After a month of recovering from his wounds, Saint Josgard was finally wearing his recently repaired suit with a Urukaman resin bubble around his head so he didn't have to breathe the same air as lowly commoners, especially with what he viewed as an inferior race. But it didn't help that his forehead was wrapped in gauze, he was missing a tooth, or that his right hand was completely encased in plaster, preventing anyone from seeing his missing fingers. "I won't forget this, you stinking fish!" Saint Josgard snarled at the collective crowd. The nerve of it all, the livestock turning on their masters. "What right does he have to resent us after we saved his life?" One knight of the royal guard muttered angrily. "We shouldn't send that bastard back, it will only bring danger to the island." "I know what you mean," the knight next to him started to reply, but was interrupted by Odoheim bumping into him. "Wait, please," she called out to the world noble. "It seems that we have much to discuss. I will accompany you to the surface." "Wait right there, Odoheim," Neptune bellowed, following after her. "I cannot allow such a reckless act. If you are truly intent on negotiating with these nobles, then I'll go myself." The king continued on in a desperate attempt to stop his wife from doing something that could easily endanger her because of her impulsive behavior. Aladdin immediately turned to this king in surprise. "Your Majesty. Certainly, I can't imagine you of all people would get captured by humans, but still. No. It would be meaningless for you to go, dear," the queen replied in a serious tone. "It must not be a powerful warrior like you, but a physically frail individual such as myself who goes to the surface and returns safely. That is the only way to prove that it is safe for our people in the world above. That way, we can show the world that our people are not warmongers but fellow sympathetic beings like surface dwellers as well." Of course, she was met with a lot of protests, from the citizens, the children, and especially her husband. But Naruto, who was perched on Jinbe's shoulders, was quiet, unnaturally quiet. Jinbe could feel the complex emotions rolling off the tiger shark fishman, between the intense mistrust and hatred he had for the world noble, and the faint hope that his new mother would succeed. He heard the queen give everyone her parting words and Josgard opening his mouth to no doubt object. But the warlord gave the man an intense glare that made him reel back before scoffing about their impudence. "All according to plan, you will get your wish soon, my queen," the whale shark fishman thought to himself as he watched his queen depart with the noble. 6 days. For 6 days the entire kingdom was tense with worry and anxiety. Many didn't find a wink of sleep, most businesses were closed for the time being, but most importantly our hero was racked with a bad feeling in his stomach. For 6 days he was restless, his body constantly in motion. For a good majority of the week he was always helping his new brothers keep Shirahoshi in good spirits. But after having her constantly braiding flowers into his hair, squishing him with monstrous hugs and on one occasion putting him in a pink frilly dress, Naruto knew that he couldn't continue on. He needed answers, and out of every inhabitant in the kingdom there was one person that could provide him the answers he desired. And that was why he was sitting within the fancy building known as the Mermaid Cafe. Normally the smell of the various sweets and other delicious foods the cafe was known for would make his mouth moist and his stomach growl for them. But this visit was for business and not pleasure. So after being guided by one of the mermaids floating on one of the various bubbles to get around, he was seated in a nice plush chair. After thanking the mermaid, the tiger shark fishman squared his eyes onto the person in front of him. In front of him was a mermaid sitting on a gigantic crimson couch. Not a regular mermaid, mind you, but one of the most important mermaids in the kingdom besides the queen and the princess for her fortune-telling abilities. She was large, not as large as Shirahoshi, but easily towering over most of the mermaids in the Mermaid Cove. She wore a purple blouse with a hood that covered most of her short black hair that was only buttoned in the middle, revealing her flat stomach and ample chest with a string of beads around her waist that stopped in the middle of her short fin shark tail. She had a kind smile that showed off her sharp teeth and blue eyes that resembled shark eyes. "Ah, it's good to see you again, Naruto-kun." The Mako shark mermaid greeted him with a red lipstick smile. "After being adopted by the royal family, I feared that I may never see you again." The tiger shark shrugged. "That's absurd, Madam Shirley. I owe you too much of a great debt to just forget about your kindness." Naruto bowed his head towards her. "I wish I came under better circumstances." But feeling a giant, but soft hand on his shoulder, he peered up to see the owner of the cafe smiling at him with her sharp teeth. "I know you're worried about the queen. We all are, Naruto-kun," Shirley said to him. "Queen Odoheim will come back to us safe and sound tomorrow, I promise you that." "Was that a prediction?" You already know the answer, young one. Now head on home. I'm sure little Shirahoshi's waiting for her newest Oni-chan. Shyly ruffled Naruto's hair for a brief moment, and playfully shooed him from her room. After the tiger shark fishman left the cafe, the Mako shark mermaid brought her manicured hands to her head in sudden pain. She harshly gritted her teeth in order to not cry out in horror when she saw in front of her own eyes a shadowy figure with intense crimson eyes standing with 12 other figures with flames in the background. What in the world? No, no! He would never do that. There's no way! She gasped out in denial. One more day passed, and like every prediction Madame Shirley made in her entire life came true once again. In a grand manner Otoheim arrived on the ship she left on, and through the tearful cries of her people the queen revealed to them a piece of paper signed by the Tenryubito and the Gorosei themselves. But on that day a tall, slim-built Japanese bullhead fisherman with a prominent hunch that put his head on equal level with his shoulders, cat-like whiskers, wearing a yellow fedora with a purple band covering his black hair that was rounded into dreadlocks. He was wearing a broadly red and white horizontal striped shirt under specialized green overalls for his 4 lanky legs. The Tamada Bako? He asked in glee as he revealed his sharp teeth. That's right, Captain Vander Decken. An unremarkable fisherman replied. A month's worth of waiting finally paid off. The guard that we paid off has confirmed that it's hidden somewhere in the palace. And it can cause anyone to age? That's what our intel says. Another unremarkable fisherman boasted. Could it, say? Vander Decken gave them a creepy face, and brought his right arm to waist level. Turn a teensy little brat into a fully grown, sexy lady? I don't doubt it for a second. The first one nodded at the captain of the flying pirates. Letting out a laugh of glee, the extremely odd-looking fisherman began to prance around in some sort of victory dance. That's it, folks, he proclaimed. Our little problem is solved. With that box, I can marry Princess Shirahoshi right away, I know it. Pointing at a random crew member, he barked out the order. Steal me that Tamada Bako right away. Captain, the palace is impenetrable. But if you were to marry Shirahoshi first, you would be able to get into the palace no problem, right? Gaining a shocked look, Vander Decken reeled back before laughing a unique laugh. Bahoho. Man, you guys are smart. I'm lucky to have guys like you. Placing his freakishly right-webbed hand on his chin, smiled about his future. Yes, give that little cutie patty 10 or 20 more years, she'd grow into a proper beauty. She'll grow even more gigantic, though. One of the crew members deadpanned. So what? She's big-boned, all right. I ain't got nothing against large ladies. Besides, the old saying the bigger the better is singing quite true for this situation. The captain spat back at him. And once I'm Shirahoshi's husband, it will finally be mine. The power and wealth of the royal family my clan has sought after for generations. Pulling a pen and some paper, he then proclaimed, All right. Let's start with the wedding invitations. On the double, men. Aren't you supposed to propose first, Captain Decken? The crew screamed out in response before he could even start. Meanwhile, in the giant court plaza, Queen Otoheim was once again preaching to her people for what was hopefully the final time. Standing on the stage that she usually preached at, she held up the paper high above her head signed by the world nobles and the Gorosei. The word of the world nobles and the Gorosei hold great sway, even at the reverie of the Council of Kings. She began her speech with noticeable relief in her voice. And this is an official letter from them. This is what it says. For the sake of improving relations between humans and fishmen, we support the proposal of the attached petition. In other words, if we gather enough signatures to submit at the next reverie, then this piece of paper will grant our proposal to put strength to be realistically put into action. Our relocation to the surface is no mere dream. Her words that were always worth their weight in gold stunned the residents of Fishman Island speechless. The Tenryubito, possibly the most evil human beings in existence with the help of the Gorosei, though many never heard of them, granted their support to their queen's long-awaited proposal. In all honesty, none of them knew what to think. Clearing her throat, Otoheim finished off her speech that would whether make or break all her efforts at the coexistence with mankind. All that we need now is to gather more signatures. I can only wait for all of you to make your decisions. And I beg of you to reach out for a life of harmony, for a life on the surface, where we can achieve true peace. For several long seconds no one dared to move. Time just seemed to stall, waiting for the proper response to a 7-year-long struggle. Otoheim's smile began to fade slowly. Then it was finally broken when several children rushed to the stage and deposited their slips of paper into the crate that Otoheim always had with her when she made her speeches. And almost immediately the gathered merfolk at her rally began handing in their own forms. The goldfish mermaid was shocked, touched by what the kindness of a few children can bring. overjoyed that her ideal may one day soon be achieved. Soon the small crate began overflowing with papers. And to Odoheim's joy, the minister of the right, a seahorse merman, her bodyguard and loyal supporter to her cause, came floating to her rescue with a gigantic wicker basket in his sturdy hands. Seeing Odoheim literally shedding tears of joy, he gave her a thoughtful smile. "Your Majesty, I see you are overcome by emotion. Please take a seat and rest." Raising his arms in immense joy, the merman bellowed to the people. "Come, everyone! This is the place to show your support to our queen's passionate endeavor." So overcome with emotion, Odoheim had to be escorted by the minister of the left and another guard to the castle, crying tears of joy all the way. And when she arrived at the palace, she was bombarded by her family. Neptune, with tears in his eyes, and their biological children gave her the greatest and most loving hug that she ever received in her entire life. Even Naruto, who out of all of them had the best reason to oppose everything she worked for, couldn't help but feel immense happiness for her accomplishment. Little did they know that their happiness would be shattered by the glaring eyes spying on the happy family. For days the plaza was filled from across the land, eager to submit their signatures for Odoheim's cause. But for the goldfish mermaid, she was about to have a serious discussion with the oldest male siblings in her family. "It was that moment," she began, "that I found the courage and assurance in myself that this country can truly change." "That moment?" Fukaboshi asked. "Yes, that day, when the Sea Kings peered into the island," Odoheim clarified for them. "Ah, yes. That certainly was a surprise," Manboshi chirped up. "It was Shirahoshi who called them, you know." "Eh?" Seeing their shocked faces, the queen let out a soft giggle before reaching her right hand out to caress a passing fish. "We merfolk have the ability to understand the hearts of the ocean's fish, and to communicate with them, yes? But no mermaid has been able to communicate with those gigantic sea kings. That is beyond even your father, Neptune. The only person on this island able to communicate with whales. However, according to the records of the royal family, once in every few centuries, a mermaid is born with the ability to understand and communicate even with the mighty sea kings. A mermaid who is able to speak with sea kings." Fukaboshi crossed his arms over his barrel chest and reflected on what his mother was saying to them, while his other two brothers shouted in awe. "And you're saying that's Shirahoshi, mother?" asked the shocked Manboshi. "Wow! Amazing! I'd love to be able to on a sea king's back on day," followed Raboshi. "The same can be said for Naruto," Odoheim continued to say. "Just like Shirahoshi, every few hundred years a fishman is born with a great power within him. But unlike your sister who can communicate with sea kings, Naruto has the raw power of a sea king." "Raw power of a sea king?" Manboshi's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he heard that. "That is correct. Not only does he have their strength, anger and ferocity, but also a powerful alpha aura that would make even the most ferocious creatures submit to him. According to legend, that is, these two will meet a person to direct them onto the right path, and once the time came they would combine their powers to change the world. Our little Naruto and Shirahoshi changing the world," Raboshi squeaked out in surprise. "Then maybe it'll help what you're trying to do, mother." "I feel certain of it." Odoheim smiled at them. "The power of love can save the lives of thousands if the will is strong enough. However, is used wrongly, the power that those two hold is great enough to sink the world beneath the tides. They aren't aware of their abilities, and if anything were to happen to send the two of them into a panic or anger, like what you three saw that day, it is possible that in their current states, that they would both go on a mighty rampage. If they did that, then Fishman Island would be completely destroyed." "What should we do, mother?" Raboshi asked. "For the moment, I will do everything in my power to ensure that never happens. But I ask that you, my sons, grow to become fine warriors, and use that strength to protect them with your lives." "Of course, mother. We will not fail you," the three mermen bellowed out their promise. But then on that exact same day, it happened. Suddenly, and without warning, the tens of thousands signatures caught fire. The entire plaza was in chaos. Soldiers were frantically trying to save every piece of paper they could. Odoheim, who brought her children to witness the fruits of her labor, was calling out for water. A loud bang soon echoed throughout the area. Several of the guards, all too familiar with the sound of gunfire, looked towards the source, for the shooter, and if anyone was hit. The minister of the right brought his eyes towards the queen. To his horror, he saw her clutching her bleeding chest and collapse to the ground. "Queen Odoheim has been shot." "Where's the shooter?" "Who was it?" Aladdin barked out. "There's a sniper lurking in the vicinity. Protect the royal family at all costs." Jimby barked out orders to several knights that were standing by him. "Mother!" Fukaboshi yelled in shock. His brothers followed with similar shouts. Shirahoshi was dead silent. Her eyes wide agape and her mouth frozen, her young pre-adolescent mind still trying to wrap what has just occurred. As the minister of the right cradled his queen in his arms and barking for a medic, Naruto was the first to reach her wounded body. His blue eyes already spilling tears down his face, and his hands clutching her right hand that was stained with her freshly spilled blood. Even as his siblings crowded around her. "Mother!" yelled the brothers save for Naruto, who still remained silent as his adoptive younger sister. Otoheim's eyes were half shut, as she drew deep breaths to help sustain her lungs. "Queen Otoheim!" yelled out the civilian bystanders. As Shirahoshi remained rooted catatonic. A figure walked up to her. Well, isn't this quite a ruckus? The figure, Vanderdecken, raised his right hand and placed it on Shirahoshi's lower left arm. Quite a terrible predicament. Don't you agree, Princess? A nearby guard spotted Decken and raised his pistol. Who are you? Stay away from the princess scum! He fired, but missed as the four-legged fishman scampered away. Mother, are you all right? Wailed the Orphish merman. We'll get you to a hospital in no time. Hang in there, assured Manboshi. Fukaboshi was different thoughts as he released a low, threatening growl. Who could have done this? And his face contorted to one of anger and fury, his teeth bared. I'll make them pay. I'll make them pay. Beside the slowly dying queen, the adoptive son of the royal family was slowly breathing in and out. His teeth were clenched and bared, and although his hair covered his eyes, they were slowly being covered by a shade of red. Yet he did not clench his mother's hand tighter, despite some veins bulging within his arms. Yet Otoheim raised her hands, one onto Fukaboshi's trident, the other to cup Naruto's cheek. Stay by my side, my angels. And please wipe those horrid looks off your faces. Your Majesty. You need treatment. I let my guard down. I was just so happy to finally have all those signatures. I did not. She gave a wheeze. Fukaboshi. Naruto. If there is anyone who should be bitter, it should be me, not you. Yet despite her plea, Naruto could not listen to her, her voice becoming faded. He did not know it, but his slowly rising fury was clouding him. He did not listen to his two brothers' wails, but through his hair he saw his sister. The same sister who annoyed him on hour's end with creating flower crown, hugs, and giggles. About to burst in agonizing tears. Mother. Somehow the blonde tiger shark could hear her, even if his fury distorting his hearing, and as if on K, his hearing slowly began to return to him. Manboshi and Raboshi turned towards her, then back to Naruto's slowly reddening eyes and bulging veins and saw that she was about to begin to lament, and remembered. If anything were to happen to send the two of them into a panic or anger, like what you three saw that day, it is possible that in their current states, that they would both go on a mighty rampage. And Shirahoshi and Naruto screamed. But the latter sounded more like a roar filled with sorrow. Shirahoshi! Naruto! Wait! But suddenly their screams cut short, Shirahoshi's tear-filled eyes slowly reopening and Naruto's widening in shock. Two of his adopted brothers. They were. With tears clouding their vision and runny noses. Akamambo! Akamambo! Look Naruto! Everything will be alright. Akamambo! Hey Shirahoshi, everything's as cool as night. Akamambo! It'll be okay. Everything is alright when you mambo dance, oh yeah! Shouted Manboshi at the top of his lungs, dancing and singing, even as he continued to shed his tears. Oh, what fun, such fun! Nothing can be wrong. Naruto, Shirahoshi, let us sing this song. The four of us are always with you both, Latido. Young princes! Shouted the minister of the left. What on earth, you? Shirahoshi stopped her tears, and Naruto brushed his hair back, revealing his blue and red eyes. Not reddened by the power of the Sea King within but with tears. His mouth agape. His much bigger sister was clamped shut. Someone stop the princes. The trauma has made them gone mad, yelled the minister of the right, as knights and guards gathered around and tried to hold them down. Watch on, mother. Everything will be alright. People couldn't tell if Manboshi was shouting, more like wailing, even as his visage still contained that strange smile. Siblings stick together through and through. To protect that we do, Latido. Raboshi was having as much as a hard time as his fellow brother, looking up in order to avoid looking at the slowly growing pool of blood at his mother's side. Shirahoshi continued to sob, not on the level as before. She gazed in amazement at her brothers. You, too. You are, muttered the blond tiger shark as tears wept from his own eyes. How can such people contain such great strength, even in a situation such as this? Fukaboshi had similar thoughts, as he silently sobbed, yet his gaze held nothing but the highest of admiration towards his brothers. Stop this at once. Can't you see the condition Her Majesty is in? And Naruto gazed down and gasped. His adoptive mother, the queen of Ryuji Kingdom, was giving the most happiest smile he has ever seen her bear. Naruto saw Otoheim's green eyes staring into his blue ones, a smile on her face even though she was so racked with pain. Gently squeezing his hand within hers as if to tell him not to worry, he saw the life leave her eyes. No, no, not again. Please God, not her. Anyone but her. He whispered out in denial. Otoheim reopened her eyes, and placed 2 fingers and lips and gave a kiss, then placed those fingers onto Naruto's own as he gasped. She gave another smile. Naruto could hear his older brother claiming how they will all grow up to become strong warriors, recollect the signatures, and protect Shirahoshi with their lives. The tiger shark couldn't agree more. We are so close, Otoheim whispered. I know that all of you can reach the light of the sun. All of the bystanders and pedestrians began to weep, as did the ministers. But not the royal family, who connected their fingers. They killed her, he heard a voice echo over the plaza. Looking upwards, Naruto saw none other than Hody Jones. Holding by the neck in his powerful right hand was a human. A human killed our queen. XXX won the day of Queen Otoheim's funeral. When everyone thought that things couldn't get any worse, it unfortunately did. A letter was sent to Shirahoshi, not by mail, or even a delivery fish. No, it flew straight through the castle walls. When the princess showed it to Neptune, it was discovered to be a love letter of all things. Seeing that it was from Vanderdecken, Neptune forbade the children from attending his wife's funeral for the fear of another assassination attempt. That was why they were standing in front of a camera dressed in black funeral tuxedos. Prince Fukaboshi being the most charismatic of the siblings, giving his speech about inheriting his mother's will. Before she died, my mother said that the real sun is within sight. Maybe our hearts won't make it in time for the reverie due in 2 years. But there's another one in 6, and another in 10 years. We decided that we will inherit our mother's will, even if it takes up our whole lifetime. Pausing for a bit, the first son let his words sink into the mourners watching the broadcast. Some of you probably changed their minds because of this incident. We will destroy the remaining signatures. We will start again, from scratch. And one day, when everybody's hearts are healed, let's dream of the sun once again. It would be later in the day when Jinbe met with Naruto. As the Shichibukai peered down at the tiger shark fishman who held the power of the Sea King, he saw the boy's eyes. No longer were they the bright and shining blue orbs that he remembered, they were the eyes of a broken man who lost everything. And Jinbe couldn't help but feel for him. Not only did he lose his real parents at a young age, but after enduring the harsh reality of the Fishman district, being adopted by the royal family, and then losing the person who treated him no differently than her own children. Honestly, Jinbe didn't want to see anyone who looked good after what he experienced. Boss Jinbe, I have a favor to ask you, Naruto whispered out. Looking straight at the whale shark fishman, he clenched his fists. I ask. No, I beg you to take me as your pupil. Not at all surprised at the request, the former captain of the Sun Pirates kept his stoic features and looked down at the boy. Are you sure, Naruto-kun? If I were to take you as a pupil, you will be thrust headlong into the ugly truth of the world. Whatever innocence you have now will be taken from you. Destroyed. I will take you, but I will demand 100% commitment from you if you are to master the ways of fishman karate. But the question is, are you ready for this? The tiger shark hid his eyes behind his hair as he held his head down. My innocence was destroyed years ago, and I don't care what happens to me now, Naruto replied. A man has targeted my sister. I can't protect her. I can't protect anyone as I am now. I'm ready for anything you throw at me. So please. He raised it back up, determined eyes blazing. Jinbe nodded. Then so be it. It was the very next day Jinbe introduced Naruto to the pride of Fishman Island. It wasn't Coral Hill, the Gioverly Hills, or even Waterwheel Town. No, it was the Fishman Karate Dojo, one of the most revered and respected places that taught the soldiers of Neptune's military, Jinbe, the legendary Fisher Tiger, and even the king himself. The entire outside structure was intimidating. It was made out of red coral, while the gigantic doors that blocked them from entering were made out of pure iron. Undaunted by the appearance, Jinbe pounded on the iron doors, making an eerie gonging noise that no doubt alerted every person within the dojo. Almost immediately the doors were pulled open by two 50-foot-tall blue whale fish men, and with respectful bows they granted them inside the large building. Naruto fully expected to find the place full of broken posts, destroyed walls, and the broken and battered bodies of student and teachers alike. To his surprise, however, everything in the dojo was intact, clean, and peaceful. As the two fish men entered the gigantic dojo, the blonde immediately took in the professional feel of the place, from the various fish and to his surprised merman meditating in the Zen gardens, to the sound of the students shouting out as they went through their katas. Magnificent, isn't it? Jinbe gestured his right hand at the dojo. This entire area is just for the beginners. When you advance in rank, you'll get to see more of this entire place until you reach a certain level. What happens when I reach a certain level? Naruto asked in sincere curiosity. That depends. My former crewmate Kurobe reached level 40 before leaving the dojo. Most of the palace guards are either level 25 or 30 practitioners before they leave. Honestly, Naruto-kun, it depends on the person's will to continue in this place. Then what level are you, boss? I am level 90 practitioner, Naruto-kun. The whale shark fishman answered. I have high expectations for you to one day surpass me, so train hard, okay? You're not staying? Naruto asked in a slightly surprised tone. I thought you would have an active hand in my training. And I will, my pupil. But you have to understand that my duties will force me to leave the island for extended periods of time, whether it is guarding nations in times of war to keeping pirates in check. Will you ever take me with you on one of your assignments? When I feel that you're ready, Naruto-kun. Jinbe gave his student his toothy smile before ruffling his hair up. But don't worry too much about it. I have a feeling that you'll travel with me much sooner than later. After the pep talk, the two arrived at what the blonde would the registering station. The Shichibukai signed his student into the beginner's class. After wishing his student luck and promising him that he would visit him, and telling him to visit the family as much as he could, the whale shark fishman left Naruto into the care of his teachers. After being given a white GI with a matching white sash, the tiger shark fishman guided into a room filled with 9 other students, and their teacher. While the students were of the various species of fish, the teacher, he was something else. He was an extremely tall pufferfish fishman, had small gray round eyes, sharp jagged teeth, and long orange hair that reached into his back with some pinned up at the top. He had 6 thick green stripes on his round face. Attire-wise, he wore a black GI and sash with white training tape wrapped around his forearms and hands. Finally, our last student has arrived. Now we can finally begin. The fishman's watery voice echoed throughout the room, sending shivers down the students' spines. Students, I am Suikazan Fuguki, one of the many instructors of this dojo. Here you will learn a number of devastating moves for both land and sea combat, water manipulation, and personal adaptation for your fins, teeth, and so on. Now I'm not going to lie, this will probably be the harshest experience you will ever face in your entire young lives. And I fully expect more than half of you to drop out. But for those who stay, I will warn you that I will make you bleed, sweat, cry, and on more than one occasion break your bones. You will come to hate me, but in the end you all will thank me. After finishing his speech, Fuguki leveled his gaze at his new students. Many of them were shaking in their GIs, but the blonde tiger shark was meeting his gaze with the fire of determination blazing in his blue eyes. Well, looky here, the adopted brat of the royal family has some fire in his eyes. We'll see how long that lasts. The pufferfish fishman thought to himself before pointing at the biggest student in the room. He was twice Naruto's age and several feet taller as well. But unlike the new meat, he had a killer look in his green eyes that went along with the several scars running along his black upper body and white underbelly. You there? What is your name? Skorka, sir. The killer whale fishman introduced himself. I want you, and he steeled his gaze at Naruto and gave a toothy smirk. The new arrival to spar against each other so I can see what I have to work with, the rest will follow soon after. The two fishmen nodded at their teacher, and after the remaining students cleared the way for the upcoming fight, Naruto leveled his eyes at the killer whale that stood several feet taller than him. His opponent bared his sharp teeth as some sort of threatening gesture. The blonde only glared as he tightened his fists. Fuguki raised his right arm and cut it downward. Fight! He barked at them. Being the smaller of the two, Naruto immediately sped at the killer whale fishman. Skorka immediately tensed the muscles in his right arm and took a swing. Fully expecting that maneuver, the blonde hopped to the left, and using his previous experiences in the pits jumped at his opponent's exposed opening. Reaching his arm back, he delivered a devastating punch to Skorka's ribs. The killer whale fishman gritted his teeth in pain, but undeterred he immediately spun on his left heel, and despite his giant size he proved to be pretty fast as he delivered a spinning back fist onto the back of Naruto's head. His eyes opening in surprise, Naruto found himself flying forward, skipping off the tatami mats 3 times before hitting face first into the solid coral wall. A loud cracking sound caused the students to cringe as they heard the cartilage in the tiger shark fishman's nose break, but after gnashing his teeth together the tiger shark fishman immediately fell onto his feet, turned around and sprinted towards his opponent. Skorka, seeing this, immediately threw a wild haymaker, but to his and everyone else's surprise Naruto skidded under the punch, and flew in between his legs. Not wasting a single movement, he hit the coral wall feet first, and used the friction to rebound off the wall and fly at his opponent's back. The blonde extended his fists and hit Skorka right in the kidneys. As his opponent cried out in sudden shock and pain, Naruto bent his knees, let his feet hit the floor and jumped straight into the air. For the finishing move he somersaulted once and began descending downwards, his momentum building up. The tiger shark somersaulted 2 more times before bringing his right leg out, and delivered a devastating axe kick to Skorka's bald head. The killer whale fishman felt nothing but his brain boggling inside his skull, his eyes rolling into the back of his head, and fell forward unconscious to the world. Fuguki raised an eyebrow to suppress the shock he felt towards the match. He looked over his panting student. The adopted son of Neptune and Odoheim looked to be a little out of breath. He had some perspiration running down his face, but he didn't seem to feel the blood running down his broken nose that was now coating the front a nice crimson color. Impressive boy. The pufferfish fishman nodded at him. I never expected a greenhorn to pull off combination moves like that on his first day. This isn't my first fight, Fuguki-sensei, especially against someone bigger than me, Naruto responded before he brought his right hand to his nose. Wincing a bit, he brought his thumb and index finger on the opposite ends of his nose respectfully, and a loud crack was heard as he set the broken ends back into place. I fought a lot until I was adopted. I just hope that I showed you that I still got the stuff for the school. Your form is sloppy, you have a lot of wasted movements, and you seem to be the bull-headed type. Fuguki listed off the obvious faults Naruto had. But you have decent enough reflexes, an unorthodox way of fighting, and most importantly fighting experience. I think you'll fit right in, boy. The pufferfish fishman smirked. 1 month later, Naruto learned firsthand that the rumors of the dojo were no exaggeration. The training was brutal to the core. During what he would call Hell Month, they woke them up at 3 in the morning and quite literally exercised them into the ground. Each day they were forced to lift backbreaking weights 10 times their weight, several kata exercises 1,000 times each something that tasted like cardboard but was claimed to be healthy for them, and finally an intense sparring session with one of the several instructors. That very month they weeded half of them out, and in the following months all that were left were none other than Naruto and Skorka. However, instead of a friendly rivalry, these two were more or less bitter enemies. After the blonde defeated the killer whale fishman, he inadvertently hurt his pride and ensured a bitterness that wouldn't end until one of them died. Speaking of which, the two were in another fierce sparring match. With Fuguki standing in the background, his sharp eyes darted back and forth as his 2 final students exchanged punches back and forth with each other. The battle-scarred whale shark fishman let out a growl as he punched his opponent in the chest, sending him flying straight across the room and straight into the wall. The long-haired fishman winced a little bit as the blonde fell to the floor face first, but like always he somehow got to his feet and began to run at his opponent. That is enough, he barked out, immediately stopping the two in mid-punch. Marching over, the giant fishman placed his hands on their shoulders and nodded in what they assumed was satisfaction. You two have exceeded my expectations, and have proved yourselves to be the best out of the 8 weaklings who bailed. Giving them a sharp and extremely rare smile, he reached into his GI and slapped a patch that had the number 1 on the front of their GIs. Welcome to the school, boys. Giving Fuguki a grateful smile, Naruto bowed in gratefulness and respect. Thank you, Fuguki-sensei, I won't let you down. Skorka narrowed his eyes and bowed soon after in thanks to his teacher. We will see about that, boy, it only gets harder from here. Fuguki's voice spoke nothing but the truth. Come back tomorrow, boys, we will turn you both into fighters yet. The next day Naruto found himself standing within a group of nearly 20 students within one of the many rooms within the dojo. His eyes staring straight ahead at one of the instructors as he showed them the 10-tile punch with a bored look on his face. Normally he would have paid great attention to the lesson, but his mind was occupied with his sad reunion with his family. Normally such an achievement of surviving Hell Month would have been met with great joy and celebration, but with Odoheim's assassination still fresh in everyone's mind and Shirahoshi being targeted by a dangerous pedophile, the blonde honestly wasn't expecting a very happy place when he got there. And sure enough, when he walked through the doors the mood was pretty somber. Neptune was a shadow of his former self. No longer the jolly king and second father was still heartbroken from losing the love of his life and from what the various staff members were saying would never take another for as long as he lived. Roboshi and Manboshi had masks of false happiness that were just sickening to look at. Fukaboshi, he'd seen no fin or hair of him, the merman that he viewed as his eldest brother simply disappeared. And finally to Naruto's ever-growing anger at the unfairness that befell his adopted family, Shirahoshi, the mermaid that always made him feel better, was nearly killed by the pirate Vanderdecken. Apparently she politely declined the 8th-generation pirate captain, which apparently threw him into a homicidal rage, which he claimed in one of his letters that if he couldn't have Shirahoshi, no one would, and with great reluctance she was forced to stay inside the hard-shell tower where Neptune once locked himself in to quell his killing urges after Otoheim was murdered until the man was captured and dealt with. After being denied access due to the fear that a weapon would fly at the tower at any second, Naruto went straight to his room, stayed there until morning, and left without even saying a goodbye to anyone. Uzumaki! An irritated voice broke Naruto out of his inner thoughts to meet face-to-face with the instructor Yumino Irika, a bottlenose dolphin fishman glaring straight at him. For the third time, what is the proper technique for maximizing the damage of the 10-tile punch? I'm sorry, Irika-sensei, the proper technique is to visualize your target, and with proper rotation of the elbow and fist your strike would be maximized to the fullest extent. Naruto answered the question to the best of his ability. Not exactly, Naruto. Snapping his fingers, the wall across the students opened up to reveal an extremely long table with exactly 100 tiles securely fastened on it. You see, students, the proper rotation of the elbow is a factor, but your footwork is very important when delivering a punch. The stronger your stance, the more you'll be able to load a punch. Holding his right hand up to show them, the scar-nosed fishman continued. I am right-handed. When I throw a left hook, I step forward with my left, pivot with my right, rotate my right shoulder, then start delivering my punch. At the last second before making contact, I turn my fist inward and turn my knuckles upward so that my index and middle fingers are in the area making contact. Making sure his students were paying full attention, Irika proceeded to demonstrate the proper technique, and punched the row of 100 tiles. His fist broke through the first 3 tiles, and what could only be described as massive shock wave of kinetic energy destroyed the remaining 97 tiles. Seeing his students with their jaws unhinged in awe, the brown-haired teacher scratched his nose and chuckled. Now that I wowed you, let's get started on the 10-tile punch, then we will work our way upwards, okay? Because of his last name, Naruto had to wait his turn to try his hand in breaking the 10 tiles. Now normally this would irritate him, but this time he was glad to be the last to take a try. The blonde observed the technique of the levels above him. He saw their footwork, the way they rotated their shoulders, and the point of impact where their fists hit the tiles. He also viewed the rookie students, mainly the level 2 through 5s, and saw what not to do, which involved them either breaking or bruising their fists, minus that rat bastard Skorka, of course. He was just a monster with brute strength on his side. Then his turn came and a small bit of nervousness crept into his throat, but it didn't stop him from walking on over to the table with 10 tiles secured on it. Naruto took several deep breaths and slowly visualized the target. Zeroing in, he breathed out one more time, raised his right fist, and using punched at the tiles. Miss. He heard someone cough out, causing him to unfortunately miss his intended target, causing his right knuckle to scrape against the side of the stone, tearing the skin open. Immediately a good majority or the class, mainly the younger and immature ones, to burst out laughing. But for Naruto's sake, the older ones would only wince in sympathy as they cradled their knuckles, except for Skorka, who gave him a vicious toothy grin. Like a switch flicking the lights on, Naruto growled angrily at the killer whale fishman. With his hair overshadowing his eyes, no one saw his eyes bleeding into the crimson color of Sea King mode. He saw Irika flapping his lips, but no words were reaching though to him, so he did the only logical thing that came to mind. He attempted to punch the tiles again, and this time he succeeded. With his right arm expanding with muscle and adrenaline, he punched not only through the 10 tiles, but through the coral wall as well. Dead silence filled the room as the students looked on in pure shock, but unlike them, Irika walked up to his panting student and placed his right hand on Naruto's shaking right shoulder. When the blonde looked up, he gave the bottlenose dolphin fishman a fake smile and a thumbs up. Looks like I passed, huh, Irika-sensei? Yes you did, Naruto, yes you did. 2 years later, Naruto found himself standing in front of Fuguki. The puffer fishman looked down at the 10-year-old and noted that the boy he left in Irika's capable hands had changed a good deal. Other than being an inch taller and more sturdy-looking, he had a more serious deposition and had his fists wrapped in training tape. Do you know why you're here, Uzumaki? He asked. I'm afraid I don't, Fuguki-sensei. Naruto politely answered. It because I wish to give you this. With years of experience, Fuguki lashed his right arm out, tore his patch that had the number 9 on it, and slapped on a patch that had the number 10 on it. You have progressed much this year, but that wasn't the reason I called you here, boy. Seeing the blonde raise an eyebrow, he continued. Unfortunately, this is where you part ways with the school for now. King Neptune has asked for your presence. What does my father want? The blonde asked with Neptune's role as his dad sounding foreign to him. That is not my business, boy, but he says it's very important. Now get out of here. After reluctantly leaving the dojo, Naruto found himself inside the castle nearly an hour later, standing right in front of Neptune and Jinbe. And just like a year before, nothing had changed. What used to be a place of joy and happiness was just nothing more than an empty place of mourning. Sure, the staff was smiling and hard at work, but it was a farce, a sickening farce. There was no happiness here, and he suspected that there will never be any ever again. Naruto, my son, do you know why I called you here? Neptune asked. I'm afraid I don't, father. That's because I requested it, Naruto-kun. Jinbe answered for his king. Seeing the young tiger shark fisherman look at him in confusion, the newest member of the Shichibukai explained himself. I know what you're thinking. Why is Boss Jinbe interrupting my time in the dojo? Well, I'll have you know that you need to see the world, the real world, and all the people in it, so for the next month you will be accompanying me to the surface. Instead of seeing the boy jump for joy about going to the surface like Otoheim once did, Naruto only gave the whale shark fisherman a deadpan look. Sorry, boss, but I'm afraid I will have to decline. Seeing Jinbe's eyes narrow at him caused the blonde to stop dead in his tracks at his chilling gaze, and then he suddenly remembered what Jinbe said to him a year ago. The only way to protect everyone he held dear was to face everything above and below the sea. Never mind, I'm ready when you are. We leave tomorrow. I suggest that you settle your affairs before you leave. After bidding Jinbe farewell, Naruto left the throne room without a second thought, leaving the two alone. He's changed, Jinbe. I'm beginning to worry about him being a destroyer rather than a savior. Do not worry, my king. Naruto is still young, and he still knows right from wrong. Just give him some time. He was given 2 years. I thought that putting all his anger towards training he would finally come around. Looking towards Neptune, Jinbe kept his stoic gaze on him. The boy has been through much. Just rely on me. Otoheim's faith in him will not be in vain. While the adults were left talking, Naruto found himself doing what Jinbe told him to do. He figured that after a year he could see Shirahoshi again, and that was why he was standing in front of the hard-shell tower. The guards, however, weren't cooperating with his request to see her. Come on, let me in. Naruto barked out at the two. I'm sorry, Prince. For the last time, I'm not a prince. The blonde rebutted him. I'm not in line for the crown. I'm not of royal blood. I'm just some kid the royal family brought into their home. That is not helping your case, child. The second one deadpanned. I know that. But please, I need to see Shirahoshi. It's been over a year since we even talked, much less seen each other. I will be leaving tomorrow for an entire month, and when I get back I'm planning on going back to the dojo. I only want a half hour, nothing more, nothing less. We said no. The second guard snapped at him. Placing his webbed hand on his colleague's shoulder, the first guard did his best to stop the situation from escalating. Naruto, I know you miss her, we all do. But please, you must understand that it is still far too dangerous to let her have visitors. It's just as dangerous delivering her meals. Seeing the crestfallen look the blonde was giving him, the first guard sighed and said this to him. Tell you what, when you reach level 40 in the Fisherman Karate Dojo, then and only then will we in good faith let you in. We'll even discuss it with King Neptune when he comes by later today. The look in his eyes showed that it was an outrageous offer. Because he would more than likely be in his teens before he could see her again, so after clenching his fists hard enough to make his knuckles pop, he sighed in defeat and accepted the deal. For now. The very next day, Naruto boarded a ship coated with the Urukuman resin Saint Josgard used upon leaving Fishman Island. It was an experience for Naruto, who never stepped foot off the place of his birth. That was a good sign for Jinbe, seeing his awed and terrified expressions at the giant beasts that passed by the ship. Then when they actually reached the surface, the boy nearly had a heart attack when he felt the heat, the gentle sea breeze, and seeing the real sun for the first time. But then when the days dragged on, the poor boy spent most of the time hanging over the side of the ship puking his guts out. Thankfully for him, at least it only lasted a week before he got his sea legs, but unfortunately for most of the crew, boredom did not suit Naruto at all. For the remaining week, the blonde continued to train his body with a disturbingly amount of push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and any other exercise he could come up with. Naruto-kun, normally I would be proud that you're continuing to train, but you need to let your body rest. Jinbe said to his student as he watched him perform his 1000th sit-up. and it looked like he still had a shockingly amount of energy to spare. "I'm sorry, boss, but I can't stop. To get to the next level, I'm supposed to be able to lift nearly 800 pounds 20 times. And it's only going to get tougher, my pupil. You may have gotten to level 10 in under a year. Congratulations, by the way, but I don't expect you to kill yourself to rise through the ranks. There will be instances when I have to pull you out for weeks, if not months at a time." Almost immediately, Naruto scrunched his in displeasure. "Now don't give me that face, boy. What you may miss in the dojo, I will have you learning the more advanced arts of Cat 8, and if you show the potential, water manipulation. I honestly can't find any fault in that, boss," Naruto said, finding no fault in his reasoning. "Does that mean I will get as strong as you, or like the other warriors in the paintings?" For a while Jinbe said nothing, his eyes glazing over as if remembering something from long ago. "Naruto-kun, I don't doubt for a second that you will become as strong as them. Who are those guys anyways? I recognized Father in his youth, and I heard tales of a couple other from the other nights. But I don't recognize the fisherman with the gigantic sword wrapped in bandages, nor do I know about the 3 humans." If anything, the look of remembrance became full-blown on the whale-shark fishman's face. "Naruto, those 4 are very special paintings. I may have not met 3 of them, but I heard much about them." "Like what?" "Well, I guess I have one story in me before we arrive. The first person that comes to mind is none other than Hoshigaki Kisame, the monster of the sea. Before I was born, he was a royal knight that fiercely protected Fishman Island, both foreign and domestic. He was said to have been as strong as 100 fishmen combined together, the best swordsman of his time, and from the rumors I've heard, able to steal a person's life force." "Whatever happened to him, boss?" "He died, Naruto. A couple years before I was born, Fishman Island came under attack by an entire armada of pirates. The story goes is that he alone wouldn't allow anyone, much less humans, to kidnap his people, and with his mighty samahada in hand he alone fought the thousands of pirates, and with his bravery and courage he inspired the rest of Fishman Island to fight off its invaders. Unfortunately, he died afterwards due to the multitude of his wounds. From what I heard, he was greatly mourned like Odoheim was, and buried him with his sword in a secret only known to the higher-ups of the military." "Why was he buried with his sword, boss?" Naruto asked. "That is a story for another time, Naruto-kun. We've arrived to our destination." To Naruto's ever-increasing displeasure, he found himself inside the Holy Land Mariah while listening to the rulers of almost every country under government bickering at each other. Apparently, what Jinbe conveniently forgot to mention to him was that he offered to help with negotiations for this year's reverie, because in his own words, "Naruto-kun, Fishman Island will one day attend the reverie. And I offered to make sure that everything goes smoothly so that they don't cause a war between each other, and so that we know what to expect when our time comes to join them." Well, apparently the reverie involved nothing more than a bunch of old men screaming at each other. Seriously, was this what his adoptive mother imagined? "Everyone, please give me your attention." A gray-bearded man smoking a cigar barked at them, holding up a picture of a dark-eyed man with long spiky black hair with a widow's peak, and what resembled red tribal tattoos on the left side of his head with a sinister grin on his face. "Instead of bickering over petty nonsense, we need to focus on this man. A revolutionary by the name of Dragon. He's extremely dangerous. And within 5 to 6 years he will be a threat to the world." A few of the rulers stopped screaming at each other to listen in, but an overweight man dressed in tin-plated armor and a hooded cape made from white walleye skin scoffed at the notion. He brushed his dark blue hair sideways, gritted his cylinder-shaped jaw made up of tin plates together, and brought his right pinky finger to his nose. "What are you talking about? This has nothing to do with my country at all. That revolutionary, or anyone, couldn't hurt my empire." Immediately Naruto found himself hating the overweight man, but a small grin came to his face when a tan middle-aged man with a tied-off beard and long, curly black hair stood up and slammed his hands on the table. "Wapple, you are so selfish. Why do you think we're holding this meeting?" He bellowed at the selfish king, causing him to fall out of his seat and onto the floor, causing several people to chuckle. "Nefertari Cobra," the fat ruler growled out. After another 4 hours of bickering, the meeting was adjourned for another 2 years. Because he was young, Naruto didn't really follow their political mumbo-jumbo, but at least no one bothered him during that entire time. However, he soon realized that he would have to wait for his mentor to clear several things with the Gorosei, whoever they were, and then they could leave. He didn't. He did. Wapple has gone off the deep end. "What the?" Naruto asked himself as several people ran past him. Normally he wouldn't care what was going on, but his curiosity got the better of him and ran towards the commotion. There he saw a sight that made his blood boil. It was that fat-ass king standing over a small blue-haired girl that looked to be about Shirahoshi's age. Oops. How rude of me. Aren't you the daughter of that stupid King Nefertari Cobra? I feel really sorry for you, mahahaha. The obnoxious king bellowed in glee as he looked down at the injured girl that he slapped not too long ago. A tall man with an old blonde English-style wig gritted his teeth at the man and was about to say something, but to Naruto's surprise the girl displayed utmost maturity for someone her age. Igor admitted fine. I'm the one at fault, she said to him in a shaky voice. That apparently didn't bode well with Wapol, who not so subtly reached his left hand behind his back. Naruto saw the familiar form of a flintlock pistol and lost it. Bursting from the crowd, Naruto blindsided him with a kick to the back of the head. Unprepared, Wapol flew forward, flinging both his arms out to reveal the pistol he was going to pull on the daughter of Nefertari Cobra. Involuntarily he pulled on his trigger finger, firing off the gun, but thankfully not hitting anyone, and smashed headfirst into a building. Immediately realizing what he just did, Naruto quickly turned on his right heel and bolted away. Just before he fled the area, he turned his head and locked his blue eyes onto the blue-haired girl's gray ones. Time seemed to stop for a split second as they eyed each other before the blonde disappeared into the crowd. The young girl, Nefertari Vivi, sat there in shocked silence. She wasn't aware of Igaram, captain of Alabastus Royal Guard, fretting over the bruise forming on her head, nor the Marines blocking off the scene. Instead, her mind was processing exactly what she saw in the blonde fishman's blue eyes, the smoldering anger at Wapol, reflecting sadness that wasn't towards her but someone else that was close to him, and bitterness of what she thought was some sort of failure. Those eyes would haunt her for years to come. Do anything interesting, Naruto-kun? Jinbe queried a few hours later once they got out to sea. I don't know what you're talking about, boss. Naruto lied. Oh really now? I could have sworn that on my way here I overheard many people talking about a blonde tiger shark fishman saving the life of Nefertari Cobra's daughter. The whale shark fishman continued to tease his pupil. But that was extremely reckless. You're lucky that Wapol was one of the most hated people there, or I would have had a tough time explaining why my pupil was out of control. Feeling flustered, the blonde huffed and crossed his arms. He had a gun, boss. I couldn't in good conscience let him shoot her. Suddenly feeling a hand on his shoulder, Naruto looked up to see Jinbe giving him an appreciating smile. You did the right thing, Naruto-kun. Queen Otoheim would be proud of you. Naruto beamed at that. Now, since it will take 2 more weeks to get home, do you want to find out if you're ready for the water manipulation exercises? You bet, boss. You have got to be kidding me. Naruto whispered to himself, his face twisted in horror and his right eye twitching. Jinbe only gave his student a loud laugh while he watched the blonde twitching as his mind digested what he told him. 5 years after the incident with Wapol, he watched his student grow by leaps and bounds. Sitting before him was not the 8-year-old boy with the power of a sea king, but a 15-year-old young man that was highly respected within the Fishman Karate Dojo, and if he was being true to himself, the son that he never had. Leaning back as he continued to watch the blonde wig out at a certain talk he took in the changes he went through. No longer was he the pipsqueak that constantly wore his karate gi that had the temper of a wolverine, but instead he was a tall teenager wearing an open blue vest that revealed his muscled torso, tan pants, and black open-toed sandals. But the only eye-raiser was the gigantic anchor that was turned into a double-headed axe strapped to his back, and with the way the small ship was tilting it showed how heavy it was, and white training tape wrapped around his right fist and forearm. So that's how we are all born? Naruto asked before placing his hand on his forehead in disbelief. That is correct, Naruto-kun. In order for our species to continue on living, a mermaid, or merman should they allow it, can split their tails at an early age to reproduce, and for the giant species with practice they could shrink down to a normal size in order. I get it. The blonde interrupted him with a red face. Our kind has complicated mating procedures, I know that now. But what I don't get is why you're explaining the fish and the mermaids to me. Naruto-kun, you're at that age where your body starts changing. Soon you will start thinking about girls, and you will grow taller, and wake up with morning. Boss. Laughing at his apprentice, Jinbe leaned against the mast of the small ship before his face went from jovial to serious in a split second, alerting the blonde that whatever he was about to say was serious. Me teaching you about reproduction aside, do you know why I pulled you out of class once again? I honestly have no idea, boss. The last time you brought me out it was to keep watch on some pirate activity around Summer Island, and I ended up having an anchor landing on my head because of it. Naruto replied as he patted the axe on his back. Clearing his throat, the whale shark fishman explained, pointed out at the sea. Because I'm on a mission to deal with a certain menace to the world government. You mean assassinate? The blonde clarified. Unfortunately, but I won't kill this man. Seeing his student raise an eyebrow, Jinbe explained his soon-to-be future actions. You see, Naruto-kun, this man has been an ally of Fishman Island for over 20 years. Almost a decade after Kisame's heroic death, another battalion of pirates descended upon Fishman Island. But this time it was a human who stopped them before they could even start, and during all of it he proclaimed the fishmen as his friends and claimed the island as one of his territories. In fact, he shared a drink with Neptune, and afterwards no pirate has ever attempted to attack our people ever again. Well, whoever he is, this man has done a piss-poor job at using his name to protect my parents, Naruto retorted, only to receive an extremely hard punch to the top of his head. Letting out a yelp of pain, he rubbed the forming knot before glaring at Jinbe. This wasn't the first time he got hit on the head for his language, or his lingering bitterness towards humans, but damn did it hurt. You better hold your tongue about the most powerful pirate since Gold Roger boy. He may be an old man, but he can still kick your ass around the world faster than you can say devil fruit. Wait a freaking second, boss, you're telling me that we're going to see Whitebeard? The tiger shark fishman bellowed in surprise. Looks like my lessons about the three great powers have stuck with you even now. Jinbe smirked at him. But you are correct, I was assigned to try and kill him because of my species, but I will not do that. Not after everything he has done for us. But why see him anyways? The man can visit the island anytime he wants to, right? Whitebeard hasn't been to the island in a long time, and truthfully I doubt that he will ever set foot on it again with his age catching up to him. Then how will we find the man? Naruto asked. There are thousands of miles that lead to nowhere, and the new world is highly volatile with unpredictable weather conditions and other things that just can't be explained. Just leave that to me, Naruto-kun, Jinbe replied. 5 days later, several days passed until Naruto finally saw the imposing ship anchored at an island that held the strongest man in the world. Unlike the marine ships that he usually saw, this was a monster-sized battleship with a blue whale figurehead. From what he saw, it held 4 gigantic masts on its deck and a row of 15 cannons on each side that looked like they could sink a ship with one shot. To his surprise, the 2 fishmen were invited onto the battleship, and immediately Naruto felt like he was suffocating. The sheer power that came from the crew members was horrifying, but after seeing Whitebeard just sitting on what looked like a gigantic chair with hooked up to numerous oxygen tubes, intravenous tubes and life support systems in his enormously muscular body, but despite that the suffocating aura he was giving off nearly made him faint. But Jinbe, who seemed unaffected, reached into his karakusa and pulled out a gigantic jug of what Naruto thought to be sake. High quality and expensive sake. Whitebeard, at long last we finally meet. Jinbe greeted the strongest man in the world. Jinbe, the Knight of the Sea. Whitebeard's deep voice echoed in everyone's ears. Never in my life did I think you would seek me out for a drink. As foreboding as his voice sounded, the elderly man gave him a smile. Come forward, we have much to discuss. Without a moment of hesitation, the whale shark fishman gently nudged his student on the shoulder and stepped forward. The two sat down in front of the giant man and poured the alcoholic beverage into 2 gigantic saucers. The 3 sat in silence as the 2 opposing sides of the law clanked the saucers together and drank for several minutes. I suppose this isn't a friendly visit. More than likely you were sent here like a dog by your masters to take care of me because of your race. Whitebeard broke the silence with the blunt truth. You are correct, Jinbe calmly replied. But as you can see, I have no intention of going through with it, not after what you have done for my people. I'm glad you think that way. It would have crushed me to harm you in front of your pupil. Seeing Whitebeard's yellow eyes gaze upon him, Naruto couldn't help but gulp as the Yonkos seemed to size him up. Then after a few seconds he let out a hearty laugh. The boy has fire in his eyes. You picked a good one, Jinbe. I'm not all that great. I still got a lot to learn, Naruto nervously responded. Nonsense, boy. What I see in you is something powerful. Otherwise you wouldn't have been able to lift that weapon of yours. Mind if I see it for a second? Nodding in response, Naruto handed the pirate captain his giant axe so he could get a good look at it. With an expert view, he weighed it with one hand and immediately deduced it to weigh around 5 tons, an impressive feat for a fishman his age. Settling his eyes on it, he saw to his confusion that it was an admiralty anchor that was missing the arms at the end of the shackle, but underneath the stock were 2 razor-sharp stainless steel pieces of metal that formed into axe heads. Impressive, to turn a simple anchor into a weapon such as this. With a little more work, I'm sure it would be a weapon for the ages. More work? What's wrong with it? Naruto frowned as he took his weapon back. It just needs work, Whitebeard replied. Naruto-kun, Whitebeard and I need to discuss some important issues. I'll meet you back at the ship. Nonsense, Jinbe let the lad see the ship. After all, it's not every day someone sees the Moby Dick inside and out. Twisting his face into a confused and disgruntled look, Naruto nodded in response and left the two to do their business. And with nothing to do, he followed Whitebeard's advice and looked around the ship, and he must say he was highly impressed with everything about it. Unlike some pirate ships he saw over the years when Jinbe dragged him along on a few of his assignments, they were filthy and some were barely staying afloat. The Moby Dick was well cleaned, and several shipwrights were obsessively looking over the walls and the floorboards, sketching down the conditions and future improvements. While he was idling through one of the many hallways, the blonde silently observed the crew members. For humans, they were well behaved, granted several of them were horsing around, a couple were drinking, and even a few were sparring against each other while others were cleaning the floors or the various weapons. But one man caught his eye. No, not a man, a fishman. Ducking into the nearest hallway, Naruto peered his head out to observe the shark fishman, as evidenced by his shark-like teeth, but Naruto could not tell his species. He also had a scar or a mark in the shape of a lightning bolt on the left side of his face and fangs protruding from his lower jaw, similar to his boss. He was somewhat short and rotund in shape, and his hair was arranged in spikes pointing upwards. He had the number 8 tattooed to the left of his neck, and wore a white t-shirt with sky blue sleeves with an orange-colored star logo for the criminal brand, an outrageous store that sold the most expensive clothing brand he ever saw in his life, on his chest. He also wore standard gray pants held up by a belt, and was barefooted. Naruto couldn't believe what he was seeing, a fishman of all people in a human pirate crew. Due to his previous experiences he figured that to be an impossibility, but his eyes were not deceiving him. And when the fishman turned his back on him to head off to who knows where, the blonde saw the shark fin protruding from his back. The blonde followed him as discreetly as possible, ducking behind corners, and blending in with a large group of pirates whenever he could. After 15 minutes the tiger shark fishman found his back pressed against the entrance to the cargo room where he saw the fishman enter. And to his immense shock, Naruto saw him chatting it up with 3 men of various ages. The first person he was leaning against a wall was a broad-chested, muscular tan man around Jinbe's height with a curly black mustache and a dark blue top hat on top of his black curly hair with an earring in each ear. He was wearing a semi-open dark blue shirt with a white diamond stripe pattern near the top that revealed some of his hairy chest, as well as a cape that matches the color of his shirt, and white gloves. He was also wearing light blue pants with a belt that held 2 sword sheaths that held 2 sabers with purple hilts. The second was a teenager with wavy black hair and childish freckles sitting on a large crate. He wore an yellow open-front shirt, black boots, black knee-length shorts with an eyelet-studded orange belt, and a blue pouch belted around his left leg. Oddly enough, he also wore a short second belt with a large red A on the silver buckle over his right hip, but left it unfastened and threaded the free end along the back of his shorts, and a dagger in a green sheath hung at his left hip. But the coolest thing he was wearing by far was a red beaded necklace and an orange hat with 2 blue smileys, one frowning and one smiling, and a string of red beads sitting above the rim. 2 long orange side straps hung down sides of his hat and met at a large medallion of a bull's skull with orange tassels. The third was a tall brown-haired man with a pompadour hairstyle that went to a point at the back of his head, and a black goatee around his chin leaning against the crate. He also had a stitched scar running down his face, around his left eye. The man was also dressed in a white posh uniform, with calf-long pants, a black belt around his waist, a yellow scarf and black shoes. The fourth and final person leaning against the other wall was a lean yet muscular, blonde-haired man with a rather sleepy look and some stubble around his chin. He was wearing a simple open purple jacket and a light blue sash adorned with an elaborate golden yellow belt around his waist. He had dark gray knee-long pants and black sandals, and on his left leg he was wearing what appears to be some sort of straw decoration. Looking closely, Naruto saw that he had Whitebeard's second Jolly Roger that looked like a cross and crescent moon mustache symbol on it. Almost immediately Naruto broke out into a cold sweat. Just like Whitebeard, he felt the sheer power rolling off them. They were a dangerous bunch, and he felt that this would not be a good time to try and talk to them. So slowly, very slowly, the blonde backed away until he felt his back hit something solid. Feeling his sweat fall from his head, he slowly turned before his eyes bugged out. Behind him was an extremely tall, very muscular, broad-chested, heavily armored and dark-skinned man. He had a long, battle-hardened face with a perpetual scowl with black stripe-like patterns for a beard and hairstyle. His legs are relatively thin in comparison to his muscular arms. He also wore dark armor with red bolted dial shoulder pads. On his chest he has a green cuirass, whose front and back portions are connected by metal straps that go over both his collarbones. Around his waist there was a big, elaborated golden belt, worn over what looked like a green skirt with golden decorations near the edge. He also wore what looked like studded, black and gold large buckled shoes or boots and matching black studded pants. Well, look who we have here, the giant man's gruff voice said as he grabbed him by his axe and lifted him into the air. It looks like we got a rat, boys. There is no need to over-exaggerate, Joe's. We all felt him coming from a mile away. The pompadour hairstyled man said in a jovial tone. Put the boy down and join us, old friend. We were about to continue last week's topic. The swordsman continued before pulling out a mug from a nearby rack, reached over to a barrel of and turned the tap, letting the alcoholic drink pour out into his mug. That one was stupid, Vista, the man known as Jose pointed out. The only one who even pulled some sort of prank was Ace here. I find that type of stuff childish. Namur won't even comment about it, and Marco only burned a house down by accident. Is that all? I bet I could entertain you with all the crap I've done. Naruto spoke up. Why he did it, he honestly didn't know, but it probably had something to do with his prankster pride that was pretty infamous on Fishman Island. Oh really now? This time it was the teenager named Ace who spoke up. Now what kind of pranks have you ever done? Was it graffiti or pantsing someone? A gigantic toothy smile soon came to the blonde's face. No, I single-handedly defaced the Royal Knight's armor. I call bullshit. Namur barked out, surprising the pirates within the room to look at the normally quiet Fishman. The Royal Knights have been trained to be on constant alert. There is no way a kid like you could even pull that off. Well then, pull up a crate, I have a story to tell you all. Provided Gigantier doesn't kill me. Naruto replied with a twinge of nervousness. A few hours later the six were found laughing like old friends who haven't seen each other in years. With some alcohol flowing through their systems, the oldest members of Whitebeard's crew were quite literally falling over themselves. Even the serious Jozu was cracking a few chuckles. Neon pink armor? That is hilarious, man. Ace bellowed out as tears of mirth fell from his eyes. I liked it when he put itching powder in their clothes. Thatch wiped a tear away from his right eye before drowning his mug of rum. While I'm not fond of sword vandalism, I can't help but find the funny. Vista admitted, but kept his hands on the hilts of his swords just in case. I just can't believe the Royal Knights have gone soft after all these years. Namur said. Before Whitebeard came along they would never let something like that happen. I mean, if a child could do it, then an assassin could. That's the point I was trying to make actually. Naruto interrupted him. I owe them so much for taking me in, it's the least I could do whether they know about it or not. That's noble of you, kid, Jose said. But what I find interesting is that Jinbe of all people helped train you to become the young man you are today. I mean, the man is considered a legend in some parts of the world. Marco commented. I'll say he and I fought for 5 straight days that ended in a tie. Ace offhandedly commented. You fought Boss Jinbe into a tie? Naruto questioned the freckled teenager. Yes, I did. He was one of the best opponents in my entire life. That's impossible. No disrespect, Ace, but I find it hard to believe that you could fight toe-to-toe with my mentor. Feeling quite insulted, Ace glared at the blonde before jumping to his feet. Is that so? Well, little Miss Anchor Carrier, I doubt you have ever faced anyone of his caliber, let alone mine. Is that a challenge I hear, Freckleface? Naruto demanded. You bet your ass it is. I'm going to fight you, and show you that I ain't no liar. What the fuck just happened? Namor deadpanned as the 2 teenagers bolted out of the room. On the deck of the Moby Dice, 3 minutes later, what the hell is going on here? Whitebeard demanded when he saw Ace and Naruto run by both Jinbe and himself, before leaping onto the sandbar of the island they were anchored at. It looks like a fight, one of the crew members remarked. Jinbe, however, looked on with confusion when he saw his student stretch his legs out, and to his immense surprise the one and only poor Gasti, Ace, was there as well. Whitebeard, what is the captain of the Spade Pirates doing here? Oh, you didn't know? I fought him after a scuffle he had with another enemy. The boy put up quite a fight despite his weakened condition, but I defeated him in the end. And brought him on your ship? The whale shark fisherman questioned. He was rumored to be after your head. Was that really a wise idea? Gururara. The boy tried to kill 100 times, but he's mellowed out in the last few months. Now I can happily say he's one of my sons. Whitebeard dismissed the fisherman's worries with a wave of his powerful right hand. Now let's cut the chatter. I'm eager to see the results of this fight. With Naruto and Ace on the deserted island, all right, Freckleface, I'll give you a chance to give up right now. There is no shame in that. Naruto boasted before cracking his neck. I was just about to say the same to you, Blondie. Ace replied while he cracked his knuckles. All right, when the gun fires we start. What gun? We just ran onto the beach. Naruto deadpanned. Sweat dropping, Ace turned towards the Moby Dick and yelled, "Hey! Can one of you shoot a gun in a few seconds so we can start the fight?" Almost immediately, one of the crew members fired from his flintlock pistol, and the fight officially began. Naruto was the first to bolt towards Ace at extreme speeds despite the gigantic anchor strapped to his back. Ace, however, saw that move coming a mile away and sidestepped the blonde. The sound of metal clicking was his only warning before he found himself cut clean in half by one of the axe heads. "Take that, you. The shit?" Naruto's boasting was cut off when he saw his bifurcated opponent mend himself back together with flames. "Oh, you son of a bitch! You're one of those damn devil fruit users!" he shouted at him before switching his axe into his left hand. The blonde knew a little bit about devil fruits, that they made the people who ate them pretty damn powerful, and the only thing to beat them was with water, that was it. "That's right, Blondie. I ate the flame fruit. Good luck trying to hit me," Ace replied with a wide grin. Reeling his right arm back, Naruto gave him a shark-like grin. "Challenge accepted. Water shot." Thrusting his right arm forward, he hurled a simple droplet of water at the fire user. "Heat haze." Ace fired back as he thrust his right arm out, shooting out a stream of fire from his palm of his hand. The two attacks hit dead on, extinguishing each other into a small mist. Undeterred though, Naruto flexed his powerful leg muscles and flew right into the steam, swinging his axe, just like before, though it harmlessly passed through his opponent without harming him. "Come on, Blondie, I already told you that you can't hit me with that thing," Ace shouted at the tiger shark fishman. "It was worth another shot, Freckleface." Naruto shot back. Looking at his axe, he tossed it away where it landed on the sand with a loud crash, and stretched his arms. "All right, then I guess I'm going to have to try something new." With that said, the tiger shark fishman bent his legs, jumped high into the air, and flew straight into the sand. On board the Moby Dick, "Did your student just dive into the sand?" Whitebeard deadpanned. "Yes. I wonder what is going through his head." Jinbe scratched his bearded chin in confusion. "Don't you know your own student's moves?" Namor asked as he neared the two of them with the other commanders in tow. "I've only taught him the basics of water manipulation, extreme strength, endurance, and speed training, and how to perfect several karate techniques he was having trouble with." The Knight of the Sea defended himself. "But recently he's been really secretive about them. So far there is only 5 that I know of, and that's when he reached level 20 in the dojo." "So, this is really the first time you're seeing him in action?" Marco questioned with a raised eyebrow. "That is correct," Jinbe answered. "And I have faith that he'll exceed my expectations. Provided that he even lays a hand on Ace," Whitebeard commented when he saw the blonde fishman leap out of the sand and phase right through the former captain of the Spade Pirates. Hitting the ground once again, Naruto bared his sharp teeth at the fire user. He made it no secret that he thought lowly of devil fruit users, and now he despised whatever kind of power Ace had that made him virtually immune to physical harm by conventional means. "Damn it all to hell," he muttered to himself. "Come on, Blondie, is that all you've got? I thought a student of Jinbe would be more challenging." Ace continued to taunt his opponent with that same damnable smile on his face. "Shut up!" the blonde roared. Tightening his leg muscles, the tiger shark fishman sprang at the black-haired teenager. Naruto raised his right arm to clothesline Ace in the throat. And just like every physical attack he tried, it just went right through him. However, this time Ace pivoted on his right foot and struck him straight in the back, lighting his vest, along with himself, in a blaze. Fortunately for Naruto, the hit just sped up his momentum, causing him to fly into the ocean, extinguishing the flames. Then everything was silent, dead silent. For several seconds no one dared to move. Then chaos erupted beneath the ocean. Without any warning, Naruto rose out of the water like an angry god of the sea. The water trailed off his tan skin to cool down the recent burns, which resulted in the loss of his vest, and his blonde hair matted against his head, shielding his eyes. But the rage was rolling off of him. Everyone could see his already muscular frame increasing in size. Without a word, Naruto raised his right arm, and the sea obeyed, spinning constantly in motion to the point where it was nothing but compactly pressured water spears. "Water Fong Bullet!" his voice whispered. As if a verbal command was given, the sea water surged forward like attack dogs. Immediately Ace went on the defensive, jumping away from the spirals of death that took massive chunks of wood from the palm trees. He jumped over one that tried to take him out at the knees, but to his shock it and several others changed their course of direction to impale him in midair. Fully knowing that he couldn't dodge them all at once, he drew deep into himself and exploded in a shower of flames. The two elements hit each other dead on, creating a massive cloud of steam that covered the entire beach. Naruto, however, wasn't done by a long shot. Opening his mouth, a powerful jet of water flew out at the shore. For the spectators, they saw nothing but devastation as the technique dragged on for 5 straight minutes, leveling hundreds of trees and shattering boulders. When the adopted son of the royal family ended his water technique to catch his breath, an enormous wall of fire flew through the thick mist, forcing him to dive underneath the waves. What on God's green earth? Whitebeard looked on in immense fascination. Jinbe, that boy of yours. How is he doing that? Naruto is special. The Knight of the Sea replied, his voice betraying how baffled he was about this situation. No one is that special. It even takes prodigies decades to do what he did. How could a boy no older than 15 perform such unique and deadly attacks? Namor demanded. He trains. Jinbe solemnly responded. Every day since he was 8 years old he trained his heart out. From the many times I took him with me on my assignments, he never stopped trying to improve himself. And his teachers have been reporting to me that he stays up to the brink of dawn practicing his techniques until he faints from exhaustion. Vista was about to respond how unhealthy that was for one's body, but then a thick wall of fire that was as long as the beach itself erupted from the mist, forcing Jinbe's student to dive under the water, and disappearing as steam blocked everything from sight. Those two are going to kill each other if this keeps up, Marco commented as the mist covered the entire ship. Not unless Ace ends this first, Whitebeard replied. Unseen by the entire crew, Naruto swam downwards until he hit the bottom. His hair flowing upwards to reveal his crimson eyes, the fisherman focused his energy, molding it around him like a spiraling sphere. With a growl that expelled a massive amount of bubbles from his mouth, the blonde soared upwards onto the island still encased within the water. Once he hit the beach, the water surrounding him expelled in an outward motion, soaking the entire beach in sea water. No, not soaking it, flooding it. Is that good enough for you, Freckleface? Naruto bellowed in response to Ace's earlier taunts. His question was answered with a punch to the face that made him fly 10 feet from where he was standing. Violently hitting the ground, Naruto used the momentum to flip back onto his feet. Son of a bitch. He spat out a mouthful of blood along with 3 of his teeth. I have to admit, Blondie, you surprised me. Ace emerged from the thick mist into the crimson-eyed teen's sight. He was missing his shirt, revealing a tattoo on his upper left bicep that spelled ASC going vertically with the S crossed out. But most importantly, he soaked to the bone, nullifying his devil fruit powers. But I'm afraid that all you've done was piss me off. I could say the same thing to you too, Naruto responded before cracking his knuckles. In response, his opponent launched himself at him, punching out with his right fist. The tiger shark fisherman caught it in a vice-like grip before throwing a punch with his only free hand, only for Ace to catch it, his free hand leaving the two at a deadlock. For a full minute the two were locked in a power struggle, trying to overpower each other. Red eyes met black, and for that exact moment they saw everything that formed them into the men they were today. They both saw the hardships of their childhoods, the loss of someone close to them, and the hell they went through to get stronger. The moment soon passed and Naruto reared his head back, headbutting Ace right in his nose. Hearing the crack of cartilage, the blonde beamed when he finally saw his opponent finally bleeding, but unlike a normal person who would hold his newly broken nose, Ace reared his head back in retaliation, and smashed his forehead into the tiger shark fisherman's nose, breaking it as well. Unlike Ace, who shrugged it off, Naruto kicked his square in the stomach, sending him out of his range of vision. Cradling his bleeding nose in his right hand, Naruto felt his knees shake and give out underneath him. His senses were going haywire, his hearing ringing, his eyes blurring into double vision. At times like this he cursed that he was one of the shark species. They didn't have many weaknesses except for their eyes and sensitive noses. The blonde shakily got to his feet to make a tactical retreat so he could recover long enough to get back into the fight. Fate, however, had other plans in store. Bursting through the mist, Ace reared his right fist back and slugged Naruto right in his cheek. Not letting up, he plowed his left fist right into his stomach once, then a second time, a third time, and finally a fourth time before uppercutting the blonde fisherman right in the chin, causing his lower jaw to violently smash into his upper one, resulting in a loss of more teeth. The former captain of the Spade Pirates brought his right fist back near his body, and threw a devastating blow the blonde's chest, driving him back into the mist but not out of his range of sight. Skidding through the wet, sloppy sand, Naruto coughed in agony. Never in his life did he feel such pain. Granted, he managed to hurt his opponent, but he just turned around and damaged him twofold. It was as infuriating as it was fun. Yes, for the first time in his entire life Naruto felt the thrill of battle, to stake his life in mortal combat. Ha ha ha, oh god, this is insane. He crackled to himself. I can't stop here, I need to continue. I need more. Clenching his right fist to the point where his knuckles popped, Naruto started to rotate his shoulder, focusing his energy into his right fist. The mist began to disperse, swirling in almost a tornado-like fashion. As the mist quickly started to disperse, Ace narrowed his eyes as he saw his opponent gearing up for what looked like a powerful attack. But then a smirk came to his face as he felt his fire beginning to come back. Forming his right hand into a fist, he poured the power that came from the devil fruit into his hand, igniting it ablaze. Without a word or hesitation, the two dashed forward, raising their right fists up to attack. Whirlpool breakthrough fist! Naruto roared before punching his arm forward. Fire fist! Ace shouted as his fire-covered fist punched at his opponent. The two attacks collided with such intensity that the ground underneath them simply disintegrated, the remaining trees tore away from the ground and caught fire, and the very sea itself evaporated in several places. The two opponents gritted their teeth when they felt their respective right fists cracking under the sheer intensity of their signature moves, blinding the area in a white light, blinding the witnesses for the fight. When the light cleared, Ace was the only one left standing over the unconscious and defeated Uzumaki Naruto. It would be a few hours later when Naruto opened his eyes. He didn't flinch or cry out in pain, mainly because his entire body was numb with what he figured was morphine. Turning his head sideways, the blonde saw that he was in some sort of hospital room with a nurse checking over a chart clutched in her right hand. She was a fairly tall, light-skinned woman with light brown eyes and straight blonde hair that went to her waist with shoulder-length bangs framing both sides of her face tied off into two loose ponytails. She had a violet diamond tattoo squared on her forehead, something that Naruto found odd to see on a nurse. Attire-wise, she was wearing a pink nurse's uniform that certainly didn't hide her bust from view, black stockings, and a pink nurse's hat. "Oh, I see you're awake," she greeted him with a bored voice. "Yeah, I guess I am," Naruto responded. Planting his hands in the mattress, he pushed himself up into a sitting position, and looking downwards he noticed that his ribs were bandaged up. "Ah man, what's the damage, nurse?" "For cracked ribs, some mild second-degree burns on your back and shoulders, numerous bruises on your torso and cheek, and of course the loss of all but 2 of your teeth," the nurse replied, almost as if she rehearsed it beforehand. "Just take it easy for 2 weeks, regrow your teeth, and you will be fine. Take care, brat," she continued before departing to tend to her captain. Cool as ice. The blue-eyed teen deadpanned before lying back down on his back. Staring up at the wooden ceiling, he contemplated on the fight that he lost. Honestly, he didn't know how to feel about that. Ever since he lost his family, he only looked out for himself, and that involved a lot of fighting. He never lost a single fight, not until today. It was a sort of relief, but it was also something that made him extremely uneasy. "Hey Blondie, are you awake?" A voice cut him out of his thoughts. Turning his head again, Naruto saw Ace, looking as messed up as he, only he had a crutch under his right arm, standing at the door along with Jinbe. "Hey, mind if we come and see ya?" "I don't see why not. Even injured and defeated, you still have that mouth on you," Jinbe remarked before he stood by the foot of his student's bed. "How are you holding up?" "Like I got the living hell beat out of me," Naruto retorted. "God, Ace, even without those damn powers of yours, you're no pushover." "Haha, well, you were a relentless one." Ace scratched the back of his head and laughed sheepishly. "Seriously, I've seen a few fishmen fight before. But you are something different. I have never seen anyone stand on top of water before, or command it without touching it." "I was also surprised, Naruto-kun," Jinbe added his 2 cents. "I knew you were training hard, but to progress this far in such a short time is just astounding. You should be at least level 38 instead of level 29. Maybe you could hold a demonstration for the higher-ups, show them that you've progressed onwards while you've been traveling with Jinbe," Ace added in his 2 cents. "You stood toe-to-toe with me, so that has to count for something." "We'll see what happens. But I won't be able to do anything strenuous for 2 weeks, freaking doctor's orders." Naruto narrowed his eyebrows and immaturely pouted. "Ha! I know what you mean." The raven-haired teen patted the pouting tiger shark fishman on his right shoulder. "The nurse told me that your back bruised my right foot. Tell me, how hard is that back of yours?" "It wasn't my back per se. What you kicked and set on fire was a gigantic magnet on the back of my vest." "A freaking magnet? Blondie, don't pull my leg. How else do you explain a gigantic anchor magically hanging on my back?" Naruto deadpanned. The tailor painstakingly wove small, but powerful magnets into that vest. Now it's gone. Before he could continue his rant, Jinbe thunked the blonde on the head, adding another bruise to his injuries. "Quit your bellyaching, Naruto-kun," the Knight of the Sea berated his student. It was an unfortunate accident, but it can be replaced. But now on to serious matters. What else have you been holding back from me, you little sneak? The loud gulping noise coming from Naruto's throat did little to diminish Ace's howling laughter. After resting on the Moby Dick for the night, the entire Whitebeard crew stood upon her deck to bid their visitors farewell. It honestly surprised Naruto that some of the most powerful men in the entire sea were bawling their eyes out seeing the two of them leave. But then again, the person who beat the living hell out of him was a narcoleptic, so he guessed that there was no right to judge the others either. When Jinbe and himself boarded their small ship, the blonde looked up to see Ace waving his right arm. They gave each other a nod of acknowledgement, seeing a shark tooth strung over their necks. It didn't seem like much, but those two teeth held a promise of each other to fight again one day. And after a week of sailing, the two fishmen arrived on the island, and that was pretty much it. Jinbe took off to report his findings to Fleet Admiral Kong, and to drop off his student's weapon at the blacksmith's with a list of written instructions, while Naruto was literally forced to relax in the palace. He tried to escape several times and almost succeeded too if it wasn't for Iruka capturing him on Jinbe's request before leaving. While it completely blew that he had another week of recovery left, Naruto had to admit that it wasn't too bad. At least he finally got to see two of his adopted brothers several years after Otoheim was assassinated. Ryoboshi didn't look like he changed all that much, aside from being taller, thinner, and two rapiers that were held by his behind him. But despite those minor changes, he was more upbeat and jovial than he remembered, which caused him to feel a little better, since being gloomy was not the way he wanted to see his second oldest brother. Manboshi also didn't change either. He was still the same size and shape, but he was carrying a sheathed longsword that looked awkward for his body type, but he looked capable of using it to his fullest extent. So Naruto, is it true? Is it true that you met the infamous Whitebeard? Manboshi demanded with a great amount of glee in his voice. Yes. Was he strong? Did you see him fight? He felt strong, and no, I didn't see him fight. Was his crew strong? They are probably the best of the best. Placing his hands over his brother's mouth, Ryoboshi temporarily shut his brother up for the time being. Okay, Manboshi, I believe that's enough questions from you. Now it's my turn, so as I do. He finished his sentence in an odd musical tone that made the blonde raise an eyebrow. Did you fight someone? What do you think? Naruto pointed at his bandaged ribs. Oh, right. Who did you fight? A human by the name of Porgasti, Ace. Did you win? No. No! Manboshi bellowed out in surprise. Yes. So you did win? Palming his face, Naruto shook his head, exactly wondering how thick-headed his brother was. No, Manboshi, I put up a good fight. But in the end I got my ass kicked. Raising an eyebrow into his hairline, Ryoboshi placed his right hand under his chin and thought. While he was silly and acted goofy, the second son of Neptune was far from stupid. The same could be said for Manboshi, but he was an airhead at times, and unlike him, Ryoboshi could put two and two together almost instantly. So you lost, he simply said. Ignoring Manboshi's stunned look, Naruto simply nodded in response. He wasn't ashamed to admit a loss to a powerful enemy, especially when it showed him that while he was one of the strongest in the dojo, that didn't mean jack shit outside of the island where people were in a whole other league. So how is Shirahoshi? She's been doing well for the most part, father. Manboshi and I have been visiting her as often as we can. But with Vanderdecken still on the loose, we can't even allow her to leave the tower yet. What about Fukaboshi? Where has he been all these years? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. You don't know? Brother Fukaboshi has been training in the art of merman combat. Manboshi answered his question with his ever-increasing wide grin. Merman combat? I'm sorry, but what the hell are you talking about? Language, little brother. Ryoboshi chided his adopted brother with a wagging finger, even though it only gave him a glare in return. Naruto, merman combat is a fighting style used by us merfolk. It is used underwater and involves manipulating the water with their hands as if it were something tangible to use for long-ranged attacks. It is in essence the merfolk equivalent of fisherman karate. Before Naruto could even question where someone went to learn merman combat, Manboshi spoke up before he could. So Naruto, Shirahoshi's 12th birthday is coming up in a week. Are you going to see her this time? I can't. He gritted out through his teeth. Those bastard guards refused to let me see her, not until I reach level 40 in the dojo. That's preposterous. You're part of the family, and you should have. I can't do shit. Naruto barked at Ryoboshi. I may be part of the family, but I'm not of royal blood, nor am I in line for the throne. But I'm fine with that. It may take a few more years, but I will see her one day. He finished with an almost unnoticeable sigh of sadness in his voice, before looking down at his lap. Unknown to him, his two adopted brothers moved their eyes sideways, and quickly nodded to each other. 4 days later, Naruto found himself sitting in a hard chair across Fuguki's desk in his office. Normally this was not a big deal, since he was always getting chewed out for being absent months at a time, despite having a written excuse from Jinbe himself. But the feeling in his gut was telling that he was in for a different reason. Fuguki's glaring black eyes peered into his student's blue ones with a mixture of disinterest and a small amount of disgust. For in his webbed hands were pieces of paper, and written on them was a request from the 2 youngest sons of Neptune and the Knight of the Sea. Both were put into a very well-written, if not sophisticated, demand for him to promote Naruto up to level 40, fairly of course. Since, from the latter's accounts, Naruto was more far along in his training than everyone thought he was, and the former was to help mend their family. Uzumaki. He began to get the blonde's attention. Here in my hands are 3 requests for you to be promoted to level 40. I for one think this is nothing more than rubbish. And he demonstrated his ire by crushing the papers in his right hand, and tossed them into the trash. These requests will be denied due to the lack of proper evidence is presented before me. If you lack proper evidence, then I will give it, Naruto said to the pufferfish fishman. I do see where you're coming from, Fuguki-sensei. You hate special privileges. You want to see the people who come in here, sweat tears, blood, and mold themselves into something you would be proud of. His blue eyes glared into his black ones, but unlike the other times, he did not flinch when he met his gaze. Whatever decision you make today, I will follow it without any complaint. Minutes passed by without the 2 of them moving, much less breathing. They just stared at each other, almost peering into each other's souls. What Naruto saw was a disciplined warrior, who fought against those who wished to harm him, and the bitterness that turned him into the person he was today. But for Fuguki, he saw something that gave him pause. What he saw was a raging power stored within the blonde's body, and desire, pure desire to protect those who were important to him. And for the first time, Fuguki felt a twinge of respect flow through his bitter body. All right, Uzumaki, you have convinced me that you should get at least a chance. I want you to come back tomorrow at noon, and I want you to come into the main dojo. There you will have to complete 3 tests, pass all 3 and you will have your rank, the pufferfish fishman said. You won't regret this, sensei, Naruto promised him. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the next part, don't forget to turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Please like, subscribe, and comment below to let me know your thoughts. Check out my other videos for more content you might enjoy. Until next time, take care.